And we're live now.
Thank you very much, Aaron. It is 5 o'clock and time to get down to business for the Development and Operations Standing Committee meeting of September 14th. Today we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabek, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. And we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. And I have here moved by Member Councillor Hamlin and seconded by Member Mayor Saunderson that the content of the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee agenda for September 14th, 2020 be adopted as presented. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, our first item. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We are now on to declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any among Standing Committee this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any business arising from the previous meeting? Okay, then let us move directly on to item number 5, which is deputations. And the first is item 5.1, security gates for condominium properties. And the presenter is Daniel Whaley on behalf of the Town of Collingwood Condominium Corporation Delegation. Is Daniel with us, Aaron?
He is with us. I just unmuted him, so he should be able to talk.
Can you hear me now?
Dan? Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Well, that's good. Guess you can't see me, but you hear me. I'll make my deputation now then, shall I?
That's great. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Let me begin by thanking the members of the Development and Operations Services Committee for allowing me to speak on behalf of 5 condominium complexes in Collingwood: Wildwood Cove, Dockside, Lighthouse Point Yacht and Tennis Club, Mariners Haven, and Blue Shores. Collectively, we represent 1,253 residences in the town of Collingwood. I purchased property in Collingwood in 2001, retiring and moving here full-time in 2009. In that time, I have seen many changes. When I purchased at Lighthouse Point, it was always going to be a gated community once construction was complete. Collingwood Council put a stop to that by enacting bylaw 2010-040. It was enacted for 2 reasons. 1, to allow free access for emergency vehicles, and 2, to promote social inclusion. With the advent of the newer technology and the COVID-19 pandemic, neither of these reasons apply any longer. Modern gates open instantly with the use of a Yelp opener for emergency vehicles, fire, ambulance, and police. And social distancing, not social inclusion, is what we practice today. In 2010, Lighthouse Point had 2 recycle bins, a 6-yard container for cardboard and a 4-yard container for glass and plastic. Today, that has grown to 4 6-yard containers, overflowing, I might add. Whereas that sounds like a good thing, it isn't, because Lighthouse on its own isn't producing more recyclables. We are now paying for assorted garbage dropped at our gate by uninvited trespassers. Another unstated reason for council to pass this bylaw was that they did not want Collingwood to appear as a series of elitist gated condo complexes. I ask you, is it the gate that gives us that look? Or the uniformed security guards we are forced to use at ridiculous expense? One look at Rupert's Landing entrance shows you a well-manicured gate with no additional signage other than Rupert's Landing. One look at our entrance shows you a well-manicured entrance plastered with no trespassing and by invitation only signs, combined with orange cones directing you past a gatehouse with a uniformed security guard, questioning you who you are and why you are here. We all share the same problems, with a few of us having some that are unique to their complex. Our issues have increased steadily over the past 10 years. In the past year, with the advent of COVID-19, we have seen a meteoric rise in the number of trespassers. When the local councils close or limit the use of public parks and beaches, the less than law-abiding public seek alternatives, and as a result, we become their public park. Our signs are ignored. People trespass and use our facilities that are paid for by and are for the residents of Lighthouse Point. We have trespassing dog walkers because you closed the dog park, using our private paths, and yes, they pick up after their dog, using the mutt mitts that are provided by Lighthouse Point. But then when no one is looking, they throw them on the ground instead of the containers provided conveniently by, simply because they don't live here and they don't care. The problem will continue to exist long after COVID-19, with the never-ending development in the town and people seeking parkland to enjoy. We are working with OPP Staff Sergeant Chris Mecker to help us control the flow of persons who are not authorized to be on the property for security and safety reasons. He applauds our efforts at a time of greater volume of people coming to our community. Restricting unauthorized access at the entrance to Lighthouse Point, in addition to signage and increased patrols by police, or some form of gate that meets all requirements of the town, fire, police, and our board, would greatly help. He is glad to help us improve things at Lighthouse Point in coming up with long-term solutions. I was a Rotarian for more than 30 years. And Rotarians have a four-way test they follow in everything they think, say, and do. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? It would be great if everyone would live by this test. Bylaw 2010-040 does not pass this test. Passed by a previous administration, it is the furthest thing from being fair to all concerned. Private property is private property, yet this bylaw denies security gates if the property is owned by a condominium corporation. Private property owned by an individual has no problem installing a gate. It's not fair. The law should apply to all or none. The mayor has advised us that he is seriously concerned about our problem and will work with staff to find a solution that hopefully will satisfy all of our 5 condo developments. My conversation with the mayor inquired about a potential rebate of taxes for that portion of the services we do not receive from the town, mostly because, again, it's fair. It's the fair thing to do. It would also go a long way to help us pay for the uniformed security guards this bylaw has forced us to acquire. Hiring off-duty police to man our entrance on a holiday weekend is in excess of $3,000. To most of us, the solution is clear, but these are 2 suggestions. Rebate our taxes to help pay the security, or allow us to install a gate. If neither of these solutions are acceptable, we do hope you will find us one that will we all can live with, and as soon as possible. Time is of the essence. As the second wave of COVID-19 is upon us, and God forbid any one of our 1,253 residences contracts COVID-19 from close contact with an unwelcome trespasser and dies before we are able to protect ourselves. If it's anything we've learned, signs don't stop people, gates do. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whaley.
My pleasure. Hopefully,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, not to worry. Hopefully that's given you food for thought, and hopefully you'll be able to solve our issue.
Great. Thank you. Are there any members of the public that would wish to comment on this deputation?
We have Matt Pretty that would like to speak.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Matt.
Yep, just unmuting. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I understand what the paying resident and member of Lighthouse Point is talking about. That is one feature of that type of lifestyle and environment. I know a lot of people are making claims about keeping, the risk low. What does the man speaking think about people riding the bus? Like, what if someone gets off the bus mistakenly and they think that Lighthouse Point is a walking path, a beach, and they're like, oh, look at this place, so I'm going to get off the bus and go for a walk around the Lighthouse Point compound. Is that a concern to this person? I would like to ask him what he thinks about people getting off the bus and walking the compound.
We already have an issue related to that. People will appear on the bus with their family in tow, complete with swimmies, a variety of floaties, and walk down to the beach and spend the day on the beach. They've been approached and asked to leave. It does happen. We know a gate is not 100% effective, but it will block at least 90% of what's happening to us.
Thank you.
We also have people that walk on. We have people that bicycle on. When we have uniform security, it's not an issue. When we don't, we are slowly securing a citizens group that will be wearing identifiable security shirts and asking these people to leave.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to comment? Okay, seeing none. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Deputy Clerk Dahl.
Sorry, Nancy Post did have her hand up. Are you wanting to speak, Nancy? If so, can you please put your hand up again? Oh, I'm wondering if she might be having trouble.
Can't hear.
Maybe go on with your conversation, and if she's wanting to speak, then we can go back to her.
Okay, thank you. Standing committee, is there any comment from you? Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I definitely appreciate the representations that made by Mr. Whaley this afternoon. For sure, this summer we have seen, so many people from outside, I'll say the area of Southern Georgian Bay, arrive and literally drive from, I guess, probably Midland all the way to Meaford looking for a spot of waterfront, and they drive up and down the roads. They go in anywhere they can. It is a terrible problem for everybody, the people looking for a piece of green space, and for the communities who don't have roads and parks that have been sized to accommodate this level of visitors. And honestly, I don't have any answers, but I do think sometimes whether there is a way that our community and perhaps some of these other ones that we know could engage with our provincial counterparts and have some brainstorming sessions around what do we do. Maybe next summer COVID won't be among us and it won't matter. We don't know, but it could be. And I hear Mr. Whaley, of course, he's saying this problem has increased, over the years, but honestly, I have observed more concerns from residents in these communities this summer with the visitors arriving. And I do think, and one of the things I thought that we could have a discussion with the province on is why do these visitors not have access to public open spaces in their own communities? Is it simply everyone wants water, which I can appreciate, beyond some water, or is it they have been collecting parkland dedication monies from the development community and not spending them on parkland so that there is not sufficient open green space in these other communities, and so they head to ours? Very tricky issues, doesn't address the issue of gates. I totally see that as a bit of a separate issue, but all related. So I just really wanted to add my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. Are there any members of staff that care to comment on this deputation? Okay, seeing none, this
Sorry.
policy, oh, sorry. Oh, Chief Parr. Go ahead, and Deputy Clerk Dahl next.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I know that fire's been mentioned in this. Gates are a touchy issue with me, more to the fact of our access. I've been in the fire service for 37 years and broke down 4 gates that we were promised that would be able to open when we pull up with new technology, siren operation, the whole bit. Most recently is Rupert's did a revamp of their gate. We weren't able to gain access. Luckily, I have 4 young firefighters on the truck that could run in and assist with the situation at the property. So I'm not convinced that technology is the best way to go. A lot of times the size and roads in these communities are not adaptive to access. So then I limit them with fire route accesses. And at that point, the fire code specifically says they can't be blocked or access restricted with gates, fences, vehicles, hedges, numerous things in the fire code. So unless we can work through a lot of those topics, there's a lot of concern I have right now. The liability on myself as the fire chief for the town, and also the town if we do not have immediate access to these residents or places, is a big concern to me. I support development. I support condo development. I have no problem with it, but I just think there's a lot more stuff has to be thought out before there's we can resolve these issues with these people. So, and I mean, I apologize, not people, with the condo people or condo boards.
Thank you, Chief Parr. Deputy Clerk Dahl.
Sorry, I have Nancy posted her comments. If I could just read them out because she's having some technical difficulties.
Thank you.
So hers are, she would like to add that population is growing. People are working remotely, more retirees moving to Collingwood, snowbirds especially would like to lock up and go, and many are not ready to move to a condo apartment. And then I also have David Cotton on the line too, if you'd allow him to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay, just one second. All right, David, you should be good.
Can you hear me okay, Madam Chair?
I certainly can, David.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm a director over at Wildwood Cove, and I just wanted to give you a couple points to consider about repealing the 2010 bylaw. Our garbage situation has increased dramatically because I live near one of the garbage enclosures. I've seen people drive off of Highway 26, literally pull up to one of our enclosures, open their trunk, dump the garbage, and then leave. It's not fair that our homeowners had to pay or are paying additional costs for containers so that we can support garbage collection for passersby and trespassers. That's one point. Another point is please understand that when our homeowners, our residents in our condo association approach a trespasser, the trespasser becomes very, how do I say, challenging. We ask them very politely, we try to ask them very politely, are you here as a guest? Who is the resident you're visiting? They become very apprehensive to answer. And in one case that happened to me with a young lady, she almost started a fist fight with me because she was insulted that I even asked her. It's coming to a point right now where we're going to have to depend on the police to support us because there's going to be incidents, physical incidents that are going to happen. If we as residents and homeowners in a condo association have to approach trespassers and trespassers are going to be defensive, there are going to be physical problems. You can see it coming, and that's one of the reasons we're asking for some help to prevent trespassers from coming on our properties. And it's not just about waterfront. And I understand waterfront is a big attraction, but it's more than just waterfront. We have people just driving their bicycles through our condo association territory because they think it's part of the all the parkland and bicycle trails that they're able to go on because there is no restriction at our entranceway. Thank you for listening.
We're backing up David on that comment. We've come very close to physical confrontation on numerous occasions here. We have families that show up and refuse to leave, claiming that the beachfront is public property. Where that may be true, you can access the beach from the water side. As soon as you step ashore, you're trespassing on private land. They're asked to leave. If they don't, we call the police.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mr. Whaley. Okay,
I'm concerned about the statements made by the fire chief. What he's saying, therefore, is if the electronic alarm doesn't open the gate automatically, he won't crash through the gate to fight the fire. And if he crashes through the gate, do we not have insurance that will cover the cost of repairing the scratch on his bumper?
Chief Parr, do you care to comment?
It's through you, Chair. Yeah, it's not the fact of I won't crash through the gate. It's the fact that if it holds or avoids me being able to respond in a timely manner, then that is an issue in my belief. Second of all, I don't think there should be a need for the fire service or anybody to incur a cost to repair damage to a vehicle because of improper maintenance or whatever caused that gate not to open. So that's my comments.
I understand that. Could they not impose an annual test of the gate to make sure it functions according to your needs?
Through you, Chair, we could debate this all night, but what works one day might not work the next.
That's when you crash through the gate.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Parr. So if there are no further comments, I would like to say myself that Councillor Jeffrey, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The thought that just occurred to me, it may help or it may not help, but at least if the town could engage in a significant public education process and awareness. It's not going to get to everybody all the time, but sometimes at the outset, the best way we can kind of address these things initially is through some kind of education process. Staff may not see it as valuable or not, but it's the only thought that comes to mind right now.
Thank you. For myself, I will say that I do appreciate, in particular, Councillor Hamlin's comments in regard to the lack of availability of park space because they're closed during this pandemic. So many things are not as they usually are this year. And I wonder to what degree this may have exacerbated the issues that might be seen at these condominiums. I also am inclined to agree that if we take cash in lieu of parkland for developments, then we are potentially reducing the availability of parkland, and that is not going to be helpful in the long run in ensuring that people have access to outdoor spaces. That said, this particular policy is right now well ensconced in our current official plan and in our zoning bylaw. And our official plan is now under review. And so I'd like to propose to council and or to standing committee and in fact make the motion that this matter be referred to our consultants and staff who are in the process of reviewing and evaluating our official plan. And have this matter addressed in addition to all other matters that we will be reviewing as part of this comprehensive exercise. And then in the meantime, I think Councillor Jeffrey has made a good suggestion that perhaps through social media and through the town's website, we could convey to visitors to our community and some residents that these condominiums developments are private roads, and as such, they're not wide open to the public. If I am stating that as a motion, would there be a seconder for that motion? Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think for you to bring a motion or to table a motion, you're going to need to step away from the chair position and have the vice chair. But I'm wondering if you might defer this until the council meeting to deal with today's agenda, so that we might speak with staff to flesh out and craft how best to move this forward. Understanding that there are longer term and shorter term implications. So my suggestion would be that we defer it today until we've had an opportunity to discuss with staff and come back perhaps with a more, I guess, crafted motion, understanding the time constraints with staff and the issues at hand as well.
Okay, that makes good sense. And one of these days I will have this procedural bylaw committed to heart, I promise. So is there support for a motion to defer? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Hull.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I just ask a question or two of the deputant, the gentleman who spoke first?
Certainly. Mr. Whaley?
Through you to Mr. Whaley, just for matter of clarification, I wasn't aware that you had actually hired security. So one, I'm just interested to know how long that practice has been in place. Was that something that was instituted this summer? Has it been something that's been going on for a couple of summers or a couple of seasons?
We've had uniform security on holiday weekends for the past several years.
Okay.
It's costing us a small fortune, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Second is you referenced that we've got Officer Mecker, Chris Mecker, or you've been speaking with him. Is it maybe through you, Madam Chair, to the gentleman, and then maybe to the two members who are of the Police Services Board that are also a member of this committee? Is Mr. Mecker bringing recommendations forward to this committee? Is he bringing recommendations forward to police services on this matter? Or is this simply just a conversation that's happening at this point?
Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Deputy Mayor Hall, there have been no conversations at our Police Services Board with respect to this challenge, this particular challenge. So I don't know if the plan is to have something brought forward or if our CAO has knowledge of something that hasn't come to the committee yet or to the board yet.
Okay.
Thank you. CAO Skinner, did you care to respond?
Thank you, Chair Doherty. Yes, I would like to respond through you to Councillor Jeffrey and also to Mr. Whaley. Well, actually to Deputy Mayor Hull, I guess, when it goes through the people who were speaking. We have not talked about this at the Police Services Board. It has not been put on any notional agendas. And then I always like when we talk about the local police force. I know we call them the OPP, and they are very aptly managed by the OPP, but they are our local police force. So I often like to think of them as such. And I'm glad that the conversation about the Police Services Board was brought up. This is not directly in line with any of the priorities that are set out for the Police Services Board at the moment, but it still may make its way to a future agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one last question or point of clarification. The 5 corporations, if I start in the east with Blue Shores, Mariners Haven, Lighthouse Point, Dockside, and Wildwood Cove.
Correct.
So it's not a coincidence that those are all waterside condominium corporations. Were any other corporations on the non-water side of Highway 26 engaged in this process or conversation?
Not at this point, because quite frankly, some of those corporations on the non-water side are part of the trespassers.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those were, I just was looking for some clarification. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so I will go back to Mayor Saunderson's motion to defer to the next meeting of council. Councillor Jeffrey, is that a yes as in a second that motion? Okay, then I will call the vote to defer this discussion to the next meeting of council, or at least the September 27th or 28th meeting of council. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Our second deputation is removal of pathway at George Zubek Drive and Collins Street. And our deputants are Dianne Rinehart and Greg Gogan on behalf of the residents. Do I have Dianne and or Greg ready to go?
Yes, we're both here.
We're both here.
Terrific. I'll turn it over to you then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, committee members and Mayor Saunderson and town staff for hearing our deputation. We believe you have in hand 2 letters from us. One was sent before council considered the proposed pathway. The other one was sent after we learned of the decision to discontinue the proposal for a fence path on one side of George Zubek, but to continue it on the other side. The second one is also co-signed by many residents up and down the street. As well, you should have a signed petition against the entire pathway that was signed by 32 residents in the neighborhood and was organized by the home builder Sunvale. You should also have a video of what the pathway looks like right now when it floods after a rainstorm. You will have also received earlier a copy of the report from your engineering and planning departments recommending against building this pathway. So to start, as residents whose home is bordered by the proposed path on two sides, it runs only meters from the side and rear yards and windows of our home, our rights to privacy are directly affected by it. That said, we understand fully that privacy rights must be sacrificed for planning and social reasons when there is a greater good that can be served. But that is not the case here. In fact, the opposite is true. No planning, no social, no engineering goals will be achieved. In fact, the town's planning and engineering staff have advised council on that. Instead, the pathway will pose a danger to children and cut neighbors off from one another, dissecting a community. So let us explain. Number one, this path is being built mid-block directly across from a children's playground on Collins Street. It will only encourage children to cross mid-block on a busy street. This path then poses a danger for children. Second, there is no purpose for this path. It does not provide easy access to a destination such as a school that the streets do not. Nor is it a shortcut. It is a rectangle. Anyone walking it walks the same distance to get to George Zubek or Collins Street as they would taking the street. A pathway with a fence, as is currently being recommended by council, would also serve to cut residents off from one another and prevent children from accessing the green space by running down the backyards between the homes on Collins Street and George Zubek, as they currently do now. This is not just a concern of us or of our neighbors whose homes back onto the pathway. This is a concern of the 32 residents of the entire street who signed the Sunvale petition against it. Council has smartly suggested that the proposed pathway on the west side of George Zubek be left as green space and trees be planted. It only makes planning sense to continue to beautify the neighborhood with green space and trees on the proposed pathway on the east side of George Zubek. Currently, no trees are planned for this community by the developer in the boulevards. This would be a chance to beautify the neighborhood and improve the environment with as many trees as possible. As we argue in our letter, a short fence pathway on a floodplain will not serve the community, provide ease of access for walkers, beautify the neighborhood, or build a sense of community. It will achieve just the opposite. In fact, it will be dangerous for children and it is redundant. We request that this committee recommend to council that it reconsider its decision on this short stretch of pathway in the interest of all the residents in the neighborhood. Thank you for listening to us, and we would like to take questions if you have any.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who care to make comment or who are with you supporting your deputation this evening?
There's no one else with us. We're speaking on behalf of the people who signed the letter.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Committee. Okay, I see Deputy Mayor Hull and Deputy Clerk Dahl.
Sorry, I do have Matthew Pretty on the line that would like to speak.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. Matthew, go ahead.
Just was unmuting there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
I have two questions. One, has the Active Trails and Transportation Committee been advised of this flooding? For the general understanding of this location, could we get a location grid of where this is at? Is this South Town, West Town, East Town, North Town? What is the What is the person asking for? Can we get material to the site? Can we build it up? Can we improve it? What exactly are they asking for? Thank you.
Okay, I will ask Director Slama if she can speak to that question.
Thank you, Chair Doherty. Yeah, I think I can provide some information to Mr. Priddy. So the trail right now is in a kind of preliminary condition. It just has some granular laid down because the developer was, waiting for a decision on this trail before they fully completed it. So if the trail was to be completed, it would be built up and graded so that it drains properly the way it's supposed to the catch basin on Collins Street, and we wouldn't see a buildup of water. But in its current state today, that's why we're seeing that there is some pooling of water right now. It is not at its final grade.
Thank you, Director Slama. Mr. Priddy, anything further? Okay, I see your text. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One question through you to staff and then perhaps two comments. The question would be quite simply to the Deputy Clerk, Dahl. Procedurally, I assume this would need a notice of reconsideration. And would the notice of reconsideration be brought forward tonight or at the next council meeting, which would be on the 28th?
I think if this committee was to vote in favor of referring it to council for reconsideration, that would do.
And then it would go through the, thank you, and again, through the chair to you, it would go through the normal course in the sense that it requires two individuals who voted against, I believe. Is that correct? Or at least one?
You would need your 2/3 vote for it to be reconsidered by council.
Okay. And then if I may, I guess the next question would be if this decision was reversed to remediate this particular stretch, and I think we've all seen the video that was provided. I'm assuming it would just be remediated with sod. Is that something that would be at the municipality's cost? And could it be something that is completed this fall?
Director Slama.
Thank you, Chair, through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hall. So you are correct. If the trail was to be removed, then it would be become a grassed area, and the granulars would be removed or topsoil built up on top of it. And currently, as this proposal was presented from the developer had indicated that they would move forward and do that work at their costs.
Okay. Another question, just to clarify, it was made by the deputant or comment by the deputant. Did I understand correctly that the developer is not installing any trees on the boulevard on this particular street? Is that comment correct, or did I misinterpret that?
That's our understanding.
So if I may then through to staff, how can that be?
Director Slama.
Thank you. Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hall. I'd have to check the site plan, and I'm not sure if Director Farr is familiar with it. I just have to call it up. I was thinking that the reference was to no trees within this green area block, and really it's a stormwater block. And when we had presented this concept of removing the trail, and we had a previous discussion at committee, we talked about the ability to plant some trees. So Manager Velick had indicated there would be a couple of locations where some trees could be planted, and we would do what we could without compromising the drainage function of the facility. So, and we do that in conjunction with Manager Martin. So But if you're talking about trees on the rest of the boulevard, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to, I'd have to check that.
Okay, thank you.
Director Farr, are you able to shed some light on that?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to shed light on that at this time. It's my
Okay.
understanding that there aren't boulevard trees planned in this development, and I would have to review the documents in order to understand better why or why not through the review of the application and the agreement stage, why they're there or not there.
Okay, thank you. So we will get clarification on that for sure. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's through to probably Director Farr. In terms of the calculations of the green space, do the linear trails count towards those calculations within a development? Because if we remove the trail status, we remove public access to public property, and I'm just wondering how that impacts in terms of the original development. Any calculations for cash in lieu or provision of the parkland, or if there's anything. I'm just curious as to how that works. We own it, we'll put trees on it as best we can, but public don't have access to it. So I'm not really quite sure why we would own it.
I will, through the chair, my apologies, through the chair, Councillor Jeffrey, in response to the other question about the landscaping, we'll also review that. My understanding, though, without the benefit of having reviewed the documents, is that this space serves the purposes of a stormwater management, conduit in the event that there's a flood in the area. It's not serving a parkland purpose. But I will follow up in between now and council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Slama, and then Sir Hamlin.
Thank you, Chair Doherty. I just wanted to reiterate that Director Farr is correct. So again, this isn't green land or parkland. This is a stormwater facility lands.
Thank you. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question through you to staff. I'm just wondering if you could clarify for me the purpose of this green area. And I've heard this evening that I thought what I heard was if the trail is completed, it would be graded and any water in there would flow down to catch basins. So is that right? And then secondly, if we don't grade it and make it like a path and I'm sure if it's graded and it's grading and down to a catch basin, pedestrians will use it. But if we don't do that, is what going to happen is those lands will then not be graded to a catch basin and instead will just be a stormwater pond? And if that's the case, will there be fencing, or how will fencing work with all of this? Am I understanding this correctly? Thank you.
Director Slama.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Hamlin. No, I think you are misunderstanding it a little bit. So the whole area I'm going to call it on the west side and the east side of George Zubek, that whole these two blocks are stormwater blocks. They are not green space blocks, and they will be in their final condition graded such that stormwater flood will flow properly to the catch basins on the streets. So that is the primary function of these blocks, and they will hold that purpose, whether there is a trail on the east, the bottom block, or not.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Hamlin. You need to unmute, please.
Sorry, I'm just trying to drill down to exactly what we're talking about. So I totally understood. Thank you, Director Sama. So is what we're talking about then whether or not a trail is graded in this area as opposed to just it being sodded? Is that the sole difference? Through you, Madam Chair.
Director Slama?
Through the chair to Councillor Hamlin. So no, the blocks will be graded to serve their primary function of draining the lands. And they will be that way whether they remain green space or whether the one has a trail that is incorporated into that grading, I guess, maybe another way to put it. But there should not be, when they're graded properly, there should not be any ponding. There is no intention for there to be a stormwater pond. This is just a flood, a facility that will accommodate some flood waters and drain those to the catch basins. Does that help?
Yeah, so just to my last follow-up then. So what we're talking about is whether or not a trail goes onto this green space. Does it affect whether or not there's fencing? No. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
I have Mayor Saunderson and CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'll let CAO Skinner go. I think she was going to follow up on that point, and then I'll I'll cede way to the CAO on this point.
Okay, very good. CAO Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chair Doherty and Mayor Saunderson. I was going to comment on the question asked by Councillor Hamlin, so that order makes sense. Thank you. I did hear in the deputant's request that the fence not be installed. So I think that in addition, so there seems to be a number of things at play in the request, but it would include whether it visually appeals and invites public access, and also whether in fact that space is fenced off from the backyards that and back onto it on both sides. I do believe are a part of the overall decision, in addition to whether there's a, the physical appearance of a trail within the spot, the lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Saunderson.
And thank you, Chair and CEO Skinner. That was a clarification I was looking for as well, because the fence is part of the report, and I understand it would cost in the neighborhood of $15,000. And this is a question through you, Madam Chair, to the Deputy Clerk. I would imagine that the motion to reconsider, when it gets to council, will have to be brought by someone who voted in favor of it and still has to be supported by 2/3. But in any event, I'm prepared to move that we recommend a reconsideration to council, and understanding that it will still have to go through the proper format when it gets to council.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. Councillor Hamlin.
Yes. I just, maybe you need it seconded before I have a comment, so maybe I should stand down. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Jeffrey, you're seconding. Terrific, thank you.
My question through you, Madam Chair, is whether we can have a further staff report on some of these issues that we've talked about tonight before we make a decision on reconsideration. I just don't know how the timing works. Thank you.
Okay. Director Slama.
So would the request be to just provide some more information before this moves to council?
Yes.
Just right, because we do have a staff report has been presented already, but it's some of the particular items we talk about tonight. I think that is achievable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Slama. Deputy Mayor Hall.
This seems pretty black and white to me. And I'll be the first to acknowledge to the residents, having had an opportunity to go over and see what's been done, that I voted in the error. Staff put forward a report that seemed pretty clear, and I misinterpreted what they were presenting. Having gone back and looked through the information, it's black and white. I just missed it. I made a mistake. This should go to council, notice of reconsideration, and we should get this done ASAP. I think that the questions that have been asked were part of that staff report. And if they were not part of that staff report, or if there's further clarification that's required, I would ask that the 5 of us and the other 4 from council simply reach out to staff between now and council and have those questions directly conveyed to them, have a conversation so that they do understand. I really feel, and again, I'm one to, as I said, I read it, I misunderstood it, I made a mistake. This is black and white. Let's get on with it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also had no concern about the original staff report. However, good suggestion between now and then, if we have any further questions, to direct them to Director Slama or Director Farr. Okay, so if we're ready, let's call the vote to send back to, just help me with the wording, to refer the matter back to council with a request to reconsider. Okay, good. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
May I ask a question?
Who is that?
Greg Gogan.
Oh, Greg.
With Dianne Rinehart. Yes.
Oh, yes, certainly.
I'm curious as to whether or not the same standard simple majority will apply once it's referred back, or is it the 2/3 requirement? In other words, a higher bar in order for it to be reconsidered.
That is correct. It's the higher bar, 2/3, just to reconsider, but then the ultimate vote would be the usual simple majority.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, deputants. Item 6, staff reports. 6.1, we have P 2020-17, private roads in condominium developments. Good timing considering our discussion so far tonight. And I will turn that over to Director, oh gee.
Farr.
Who's, sorry, Director Farr.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I had to check the authorship, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is an item that was referred to staff for further discussion quite some time ago, initially in concert with the Panorama North development, which contemplates a number of multi-unit or townhouse blocks that would include private roads. And subsequently in discussion with respect to other primarily townhome, or what they would call horizontal condominium development, as opposed to apartment condos. Questions were raised by council about the role of private roads in these developments. So this report was intended to both respond to those issues that were raised, but also to allow for some discussion and a response in advance of a number of expected town home condo developments and multi-story apartment developments that are expected or are currently being processed and will come to council at some point. Next slide, please. So first off, when it comes to condominiums, condominiums are a creation of the province of Ontario, and a condominium deals primarily with the form of land tenure. Next slide, please. There's 3 main types of condominiums, and all 3 are present in Collingwood. There's standard condominiums where the unit's owned, but everything else is in common. This is similar to what you would see in a multi-unit apartment building. Common element condominiums are typically you see them in conjunction with townhouse or stacked townhouse developments. Also, my apologies, stacked townhouse developments, not stacked. The units in the lot are owned, and other elements are held in common, and that includes the road, any amenity space, et cetera. And then there's a vacant land condo. A vacant land condo is deals with timing a little bit differently than the others, insofar as a vacant land condo allows the creation of lots and construction of homes at different times in the future, and then the other elements are held in common. So it's typically you'd see this. I think Blue Shores is a good example of it, where there's a single detached home on a lot where the private road and other are held in common. Next slide, please. So in Ontario right now, it's estimated that there are over 800,000 condo units, and that 60% of new builds are in condo form. Typically in more urbanized areas, there'd be a greater percentage of condominium units in the apartment form, whereas as you move into outside major areas, and sometimes in kind of infill developments, you start to see townhomes and stacked townhomes. In Collingwood, condos have been around since 1974, and there are about 30 to 35% of all the dwelling units in Collingwood in condominium tenure. Interestingly, if you take an aerial perspective of the community, see a significant number of condominiums in the western portion of the community, on the lakefront context, and kind of what's been marketed as a kind of resort style a living development where golf courses might be intertwined among the developments. You have the Cranberry Trail, more recently the McPherson developments. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there are a number of applications that are currently in process. There are more condominium applications in different types of built form that are at the proposal stage. And by that, I mean that they haven't had a formal Planning Act application, like a site plan or an official plan, zoning bylaw amendment, or subdivision submitted with them. They're at the earlier stages of the process. Some noteworthy ones would be the McPherson Blue Fairway 4-5 project, which is probably the third phase of the McPherson development on Cranberry Trail. There's the Bridgewater Consulate development further west, for which there's an approved draft plan and subdivision. The applicants have zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan revision application in process. There's the Harmony Living development, which is incidentally located just south of the Riverside Townhouse development you were reviewing earlier. That's at the site plan stage. 665 6th Street near Georgia Meadows. There's another townhome development. There's the Waterstone townhomes that are subject to the site plan by Cranberry Trail East. The Blackmore Gates development, which is under appeal, that proposes single detached homes on condominium lots. Panorama North, the project I spoke about earlier. Wildwood Creek, which is I think it's a 6 to 8 building apartment style condo development. And then 655 here in Ontario, which is a multi-story building at Lockhart and here in Ontario. And as I mentioned, there are others, probably, let's say 5 to 10 proposals. Increasingly, we're seeing more multi-unit apartment style developments, but we do see townhome projects in a condo form throughout the community. Next slide, please. When it comes to private roads and condominiums, some of the characteristics, noteworthy characteristics, are they're typically narrower. Visitor parking is distributed throughout the development. It's partly a result of the ability to distribute parking in an efficient way throughout the development, though the roads can be narrower. There isn't as much street parking because there isn't as much space as you would see on a public road, which is wider. Emergency services plays an important role, as you heard earlier from Chief Parr, in terms of access locations, multiple access and egresses for fire safety. And then in terms of infrastructure, there are sanitary services, which are typically always owned by the condominium development located under those private roads. Same thing with, there's also stormwater facilities on these sites as well. And then there are public or private water services within those roads. And I'll speak about that a little more later. Next slide, please. Typically, condominium developments for townhouses or apartment buildings are reviewed in detail through the site plan process. And in the site plan review process, these communities are reviewed from an urban design perspective. And by that, I mean that the way that the internal common element streets are laid out and the way the buildings are situated on those streets is considered. Similarly, the architectural design of the buildings and how they essentially affect a common element, private realm space are considered, where those buildings interface with the public realm. They're also the subject of urban design. Pedestrian circulation is considered through various walkway designs, access to trail systems. From a road planning perspective, it's common for urban design review to consider cross sections and how those streets look in the development, what features they have in them, whether they can accommodate landscaping, where utilities go, those things. Again, fire access is something that's reviewed in every case. Service connections, where there's a connection between public and private services are considered, as well as connections to public roads and waste management through the requirements of Simcoe County's related division. Next slide, please. So some concerns that we reviewed in the report, P 2020-17, to try to get a flavor of the issues associated generally with condos and to kind of burrow into the specific issues that we believe underlie some of the questions that came up on private condo roads. We're involved assessing what's happened with the Condo Act in the province. It's, as I said earlier, it's the province that's created the condominium form of land tenure. And for a variety of reasons, the province initiated a review of the Condo Act in 2015 that yielded the creation of Condominium Authority of Ontario, which is an information sharing entity. It also supports the Condominium Tribunal to deal with disputes. We looked further to explore whether there were concerns about private infrastructure, and there are not a lot of resources out there to study this matter, but Aurelia struck a committee in response to some concerns from residents that were in some ways similar to those presented by the delegation earlier this evening. And these concerns centered on a question of the obligations that con owners were assuming when they purchased condominiums that include private infrastructure, and questions about how condominiums are organized and how the costs and obligations are carried by purchasers. Locally, we sort of canvassed any issues related to condominiums that have come up from the public specifically. And the two issues that have come up in recent years are timing of facilities and multi-phase developments. That's an issue where maybe you're in the first phase of the development and the gym starts to get built, and then you have to wait till the fifth phase of the development before the gym gets completed. And then the last is trespass issues, and we heard a little bit about that tonight. Next slide, please. So reviewing the various issues that were presented through our research, staff indicated in the report that we're responding to these issues by a number of actions. We're continuing our in Collingwood generally. We're updating development review processes around site plan, in particular in regards to urban design. A future report to council will be talking about urban design and how it's playing an increasing role in the review of development applications. Similarly, we're reviewing condominium exemptions. So the record in Collingwood shows that a large percentage of the condominium applications are deemed exempt from draft plan of condominium. And what the administration has been doing is working on the details of these condominiums within the scope of the site plan agreement. So presumably it's viewed as an efficiency to the development process. But as part of our review, we will be reviewing applications on a case-by-case basis to determine in what instances an exemption might be appropriate versus putting the application through a draft plan of condominium process. Generally, it would appear that by putting an application through a draft plan of condo process, municipality is able to apply condominium-related conditions more explicitly to that instrument. But we'll be working with our solicitor on this. We're also proposing to adopt similar measures as those adopted in Aurelia. I mentioned this earlier, that Aurelia had struck a committee and it was in effect for about a year. At the conclusion of the committee's work, the recommendation that was adopted by council was that the municipality be more explicit through conditions of a draft plan of condominium approval to communicate what the ownership framework and cost structure of a condominium is, to make sure that owners understood what infrastructure they would be assuming, and the owners also receive a complete package of detailed information when assumption occurs. Additionally, in the report, it's identified that the engineering department is reviewing water infrastructure as it relates to condominium developments. It's an interesting project that that department is working on. Before 2007, the municipality allowed private infrastructure for conveyance of water in condominiums, but after 2007, that infrastructure is public. So the engineering department is doing a review of all of the condominiums to get a clear understanding of what the status of the infrastructure is and what the maintenance arrangements are around that. So they'll be continuing to work on that to get greater clarity for both the condo corporations and the municipality. We intend to address concerns regarding the timing of amenities through the appropriate instrument, whether it be draft plan conditions or policies in our regulatory documents. And last, in terms of the condo trespass issues, as a staff, as administration, we're supportive of and responsive to the issues come forward and committed to communication around those things to try to achieve improvements where possible. That's the end of my presentation. I invite any questions you might have.
Excellent presentation, very thorough. Are there any comments from members of the public?
If anyone from the public wishes to speak, please raise your hand or put a comment in the chat. And no one has raised their hand, so there's no comments for this portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, comments? Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It'll come as no surprise to our committee members that I feel passionate about this issue and have talked about it at several meetings since I've been on council. And in fact, it was the only time I appeared before council, before as a council member, was to talk about this. This was even before I thought about being a council member. Because I believe that private roads and the way that we have them in Collingwood is a huge policy issue that the province needs to address, and that we don't have the tools available to us to deal with the issues that will be coming down the road. I am not worried about condominium development per se. It's a fine way of home ownership. I'm not worried about access driveways into parking areas or underground parking lots. I am worried about private roads running through these condominium developments. I understand that the provincial body that was set up to look at condominiums a few years ago didn't address this. And I would say the reason it didn't address it is number one, other than Aurelia, we are the guinea pig. I would hazard a guess that there is no other community in Ontario that has the number of private roads and townhouse developments that we have. And as part of that, our developments aren't old enough yet to have the kind of problems that I honestly see will be coming down the road. I am worried about two things. The first thing is the cost of infrastructure. And I know when I see infrastructure, eyes glaze over. But what I'm talking about are the roads, the big, huge pipes for sanitary sewer that are under the roads, and the big, huge pipes for stormwater conveyance off the properties into whatever pond or catch basins they go into. And these facilities are not built to our standards. And the question is that the private owners of these units, condo units, will be responsible for their maintenance, for their repair, and their ultimate replacement. And we know as a council how hard it is to deal with the issues around asset management planning and how much money it takes to replace these assets. And if you're not saving for them, you know, it's a problem. And I speak to, with my years, decades of experience working in the development industry and with the various ministries of the province, that I can just tell you that this is coming. And none of us might be on council when this comes, but I just see it like a tsunami coming towards us. And these condo corporations will be at our council table, and they will be saying we can't afford to replace this sewer pipe that has collapsed under the road. We can't afford to, you know, repair this road. Please take this on. And the council and our residents will be faced with these facilities that have been not built to our standards and a huge liability. I think we can say yes to condominiums. We can say no to private roads. There are many examples of this. And one of my own family members lived for decades in that kind of a community. The roads were public. The lots were all in condominium ownership. The homes were privately owned. And so they had services that came in and did the landscaping, and they shared all the costs of that and of their own park facilities. One of the developers I met with in my first months on council, his development was to request private roads in a townhouse development. And I explained to him why I didn't like that. And he said, oh, well, we're hearing that from a lot of municipalities. They don't allow it. So I know you've heard me before, and I'll just say it again. Why are we seeing these? Why? Because it costs less to build developments with private roads and private services. The road pavement widths are much narrower, so it costs less to pave them. The right-of-ways, 66 feet, as you know, maybe the paved portions, I don't even know what it is in a private condominium, 20 feet maybe. They don't have to give that extra up to 66 feet to the municipality. There's more lots you can build. And because you're not building to the specs of the municipality, I suspect they save a ton on their engineering costs and their construction costs. So what I suggest is that we say no to private condominium roads, that we offer to work with the local home builders association if they want, and we go to the province and we say, we want to have, you know, provisions in provincial legislation that give us the tools to effectively manage this for our residents. We can put, so our own development process, Adam's talked about that. For whatever reason, early on, we got off the path. We don't even, we exempt condominium developments from the condominium provisions in the Planning Act. And anyway, so the way that Aurelia's done it by adding, they make them go through the condo process, which I know we're going to examine, and then they put conditions in. But who's going to enforce those? So let's say the developer doesn't come up with a great asset management plan, so there's a shortfall. What if, you know, where are the remedies? There's no remedies. What if the sewer pipe under the road collapses, you know, year 10? Where do they go? And without a provincial structure around this, you know, I honestly, I just think it's a huge policy issue. And if we don't want to wade into that with our Home Builders Association and try and sort this out, because even today I thought about what would it take? I mean, honestly, I think we could do this, but even as myself, if I put a professional hat on, I'm saying this is 100 hours. Or we just say, no, we're not allowing private roads in our condo developments. You guys put in public roads. You can have all the condos you want on them, but don't give us the headaches, and let them go to their provincial associations and lobby for the changes that are required. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. I have Mayor Saunderson and then Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I certainly heard Councillor Hamlin's comments, and I know this is an issue she cares passionately about. The motion today is simply to receive this report for information purposes. And I guess when we get to the infrastructure concerns, my understanding from the report is that since 2007, any new condominium corporations will be using public services, municipal services, because of the requirements for us under the Safe Water Drinking Act. And so only the condo corporations that were built before 2007 will have private services. So I think that moving forward, the issue about private roads really deals with the surface infrastructure, not the underground infrastructure. And having dealt with condominiums, when any purchaser, and the deputy mayor will know this, anytime a purchaser is looking to purchase a condo, they are provided with a status certificate. That's an automatic condition that's attached to any agreement of purchase and sale regarding a condominium. And the status certificate is a snapshot in time that shows the financial health and well-being of the corporation, the assessment costs, the common fees, and the reserve fund that has a reserve fund study requirement, which must be done every 5 years. And the reserve fund study is an asset management plan program pursuant to which the condo corporation must assess all of its assets and have an engineering firm do that to talk about the need for the reserve fund and the immediate needs for that reserve fund going out 1 year to 20 years. So I appreciate Councillor Hamlin's comments, but I think in our community where we have issues with housing inventory and different types of housing inventory, that something like this could be a huge disincentive for condominium corporations, which form a part of our housing stock and a good part of our housing stock. And final comment would be that if we were going to look at something as significant as this, now that we are going through our OP plan review, perhaps that might be a conversation to have with our consultants, as opposed to council sticking in and just requiring that there be no private roads. Certainly not something I would support moving forward. So for today's purposes, I'm certainly thankful, thank staff for this report. It's, I think, a comprehensive report, and it brings up lots of discussions moving forward. But at this point in time, I would not be in favor of a blanket ban on private roads. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Jeffrey and I'll come back to you, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The mayor covered off quite a few of my observations at this point, and I am very appreciative of the staff report. I thought it was very thorough and very good and I like the recommendations again in terms of education of people buying condos, because those purchasers really need to understand in terms of that infrastructure, they're going into a deal that's back-ended. Their cost of buying their condo home is less at this point because they haven't had to build to the municipal standards. And so on the back end, if your reserves have not been kept properly, then you end up with an assessment. That's how it's handled. I know family members who have had condos in properties in Collingwood. If the elevator quits working, everybody has to kick in $2,500 each over 5 months, and that's kind of the way it goes. So I agree with staff in terms of educating the buyers as to what they're actually getting into. And then, you know, going forward, I'm just not sure how big of a process we want to undertake the costs for to combat the provincial positioning on a product they've made available. I think that's a really uphill battle. Anyway, so I look forward to receiving the report and some of the mayor's suggestions being followed through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamlin.
Yes, thank you. I just had a few questions. I had a few questions arising out of our mayor's comments for staff. So one of the questions is, I had understood that the water pipes have to be built to municipal standards, but that the sewer pipes, the stormwater pipes and facility, and the roads do not. Could staff clarify that for me, please?
Director Slama or Farr? I guess Director Slama.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can answer that question first, and if Director Farr would like to add anything, he can. So that is correct. So currently on the condominium land, within the condominium lands, the road and the sanitary and the storm infrastructure remains private and is not necessarily constructed to town standards. The water infrastructure is public, and so it is constructed to our town standards. So it's just the one piece of infrastructure that meets our standards at this time. And that was the change that was implemented in the municipality by the municipality's choice in 2007.
Thank you. My second question is, I certainly understand about elevator replacement and roofs and so on that a condominium corporation, a multi-story one, might deal with. My question for staff is, do we have any idea what it costs comparatively for replacing, if you had to replace infrastructure and roads, and I don't know if it's per square foot or, I've got no idea about this. All I know is in my experience, developers have, major hissy fits if they have to replace infrastructure before assumption. What kind of cost? Like in my mind, it's millions and millions of dollars to replace road and pipes, like millions, like beyond what a condo corporation could deal with. Am I wrong in thinking that? Does anyone know?
Director Slama, do you want to take a run at that?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have an exact number, but you are correct, right? To replace, especially some underground piped infrastructure where you're disrupting a road and you need to reinstate it, the cost can be significant and add up. But I don't, if Manager Velick was on the line, he would probably have a good idea of some unit prices to give us some perspective. Unfortunately, I don't have those off the top of my head.
Okay. And lastly, has staff ever looked at a reserve fund for all these condo corporations that we're seeing to see if they're collecting money for replacing all this infrastructure in the roads?
Director Farr?
Well, I don't think I've been here long enough to assess enough condos to tell you whether we've been evaluating reserves. Typically, on there wouldn't be significant staff involvement in assessing the sufficiency of funds in the reserve. There just wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. CAO Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chair Doherty. And I just wanted to add, I do not believe that assessment of the sufficiency of funds is actually a municipal local government role. I believe it's administered through provincial regulation. and that the condo corps are required to have a third party review the sufficiency of their the reserve study, which is their asset management work through the provincial direction and oversight. So we have not had active reviews in any way or fingers into looking at the financial health of the condo corporations within the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, that leads me to a question then. If through the Condominium Authority of Ontario, condominium corps are required to maintain sufficient resources for an effective asset management plan, is the municipality in which or that is hosting them privy to that information? And if not, should we be privy to that information? I guess where I'm going with that is, you know, we need to be knowledgeable as to what kinds of proposals we're entertaining and whether they're satisfying all of the Ontario regulations. Direct that question to CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Chair Doherty. I don't know the answer to your question outright. I think that if in our, of course, we'd like to know. We'd like to be able to monitor, for example, the risks that Councillor Hamlin has outlined. I hesitate to say it's something that we've proactively as staff thought of doing, because we do think of it as something that was set up as under provincial instruments and you know, in a provincial regulatory approach to be transparent to buyers. I think as far as I would want to go as staff, and I'm not suggesting we go here, but if we were asked to go here, as far as I'd want to go in a first instance would be to potentially look at a high level overview of who's responsible for what and what each entity would need to do with respect to the long-term financial health of a condo corporation. And if then there was a second step beyond that, we could look there. So, you know, who would be responsible for that financial health, and what are the types of things they would do, which I would assume would be somewhat readily available from the province, would be about as far as I would suggest a first step would make sense.
Councillor Hamlin.
Yes, I just wanted to ask staff one more question, if I may. I'm just wondering, like, why, I'm just going to turn the question the other way. Why do we want private roads? And I put it in with two community concerns behind it. One is having them, aside from these costs and so on, we take away from the connected communities that I think, you know, all of us, you know, have enjoyed, and gives rise to people wanting to gate off their communities and not having trails and connected sidewalks and so on. And it also gives rise to the other issue we heard tonight, which is the double taxation. And that's, I know I was asked during my time in practice several times by major condominium interests, residents, to advise on whether there was some way they could get out of this double charging. Well, there isn't, right? And so people who are in condo units, they pay for their own garbage pickup, the maintenance of their road, their sewers, and so on. And they pay for everybody else's in the community. So unless they're on public roads, and then they're going to get, you know, County of Simcoe is going to pick up their garbage. They're going to be part of the community pool for infrastructure repairs and so on. So with that in mind, and everything I've said, I would just like to ask, why do we want, is there an answer we have? Why do we want private roads?
Director Farr or Director Slama? You can all take a run at it if you like.
Or maybe this is just rhetorical. You don't have to answer. I don't know.
I think what I would say, I'll just make a quick comment and then hand over to Director Slama. I'm not an advocate for or against private roads. There are certain instances where private roads allow greater intensification, more efficient use of the land than would otherwise be the case. So there is a kind of a complementary benefit to their use in terms of intensification and site limitations. Correspondingly, there are certain cases where there arguably merits to pursue the requirement for a public road. And in my view, these things are sometimes context specific. You can have a row of street townhouses with a road that kind of encircles them, where there's Natural Condo Corporation on the other side, and the backyards of those street townhomes that are not in a condominium corporation, and it's strictly a matter of efficiency of use. And then otherwise, there's a robust recorded, I guess, information through CMHC and the Condominium Authority of Ontario that speaks to the pros and cons of condominium ownership. So there is a market dimension to this as well, depending on what a developer is trying to achieve with their development proposal. So I think those are two factors to consider. But again, it's not I don't think a one size fits all situation. With that, I ask Director Slama if she has any comments.
Director Slama?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide a comment about the double taxation, and I just wanted to remind committee, right, that when we look at our tax levy and the cost of maintaining roads, or we look at our utility rates, right, we are looking at the cost to maintain those systems overall across the community. And although some of these condominium residents, live in an area where they have a private road, it's a short drive before they're hitting a public road, and our taxes and our utility rates reflect that. There is some contributions by everyone to some of the common areas and the common costs, and they're distributed that way. So certainly, right, any other resident in town on a public road isn't, paying differently because of their contributions towards water treatment or wastewater treatment, right? Like there is more than just the pipe directly outside your property that those costs are covering. So yes, there are some instances where in these condominium developments, they need to have additional costs for garbage pickup and some services, but a majority of the services they are still in town, they are still benefiting from as residents of our community.
Thank you, Director Slama. I have the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. Just a comment, and I'll try and be brief. The conversation, I think, is headed sort of in two directions. One is the question to what we would like to see our community toward the future, and then looking backward in terms of the developments that we have here in the community. I'm just going to speak to the developments that we have here in the community. One is that the reference to the fact that infrastructure below ground is not to town specification does not mean that it's not to engineering best practices. That should be stated categorically, because the other implies that it's somehow inferior. And that better be proved, because that's a fairly bold statement. The second is that the purchase of a condominium in any type of form of ownership, whether it be a used product through the resale market or whether it's a new product, is unique in the sense that you do have this opportunity to acquire the condominium documents through the status certificate, and or if you're purchasing a new unit through the discovery documents, both which you have an opportunity to provide to your solicitor. Solicitor has an opportunity to provide you with comment and educate you on the pros and cons. And that's where it should stop. I don't think that we have a role in going any further for two reasons. One, we don't have a role in verifying whether or not you qualify for a mortgage, whether you're dealing with one institution or another. You're dealing with a professional. That professional is qualifying you, providing you with advice. It's all part of the purchase process. No different if you're working with a solicitor and that solicitor is giving you information. I trust that that professional is giving you the correct information so that you are making an informed decision. As somebody with some experience, I can tell you that the exuberance of going through the purchase process, often people like to hear what they think, or they think what they want to hear and not necessarily what they should hear. And that's unfortunate. But the facts are black and white. They should be part of the documents, and they're there for the professional to convey to them, as well as for the purchaser right from the outset to have the opportunity to read and understand what they're getting into. The second part of that, and maybe there isn't a second part, no, I think that was it probably. So it was just the two. It was just that one, that you have an opportunity to review through that process, and two, that as a result of that, I don't think the municipality has any place getting into sort of the fact finding. The one instance that I would just use as a reference is that, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, reserve funds, those types of things. It's based on the premise that things are done properly. And unfortunately, we've had a couple of situations within this community. It's not unique to this community. It happens elsewhere, where fraud was involved, where false documents were provided, where accounting was signed off improperly, et cetera. And therefore, when documents were provided, the documents that were provided to the end consumer or to the board that was reviewing the information was inaccurate. Having us look at those types of documents is not going to prove one way or another whether there are sufficient reserve funds in place to be able to look after past infrastructure costs and what the future may look like. It's there for the person to interpret, and we deem it to be accurate. If it turns out to be accurate, great. If it's not, that happens to be the case. And in this case, there were two examples. It's just, and it is what it is. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was just to clarify through Director Slama's comments with respect to double taxation with garbage. I am so sure that I recall in a term of council where the treasurer did a lot of work with the county in ensuring that those assessments of that with respect to that garbage removal were made equitable. So I'm not sure that that should continue to come up. If that's changed, I would like to know, but I was pretty sure that we had handled that already, and maybe our county reps would also know better.
Thank you. Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure about the taxation adjustment, but what I can tell Councillor Jeffrey is that the current costs for curbside pickup per household per year is less than $250. It will go up to about $350 with the new contract starting in November of 2021, but it is not an exorbitant sum. And just further to that, it's my recollection that there is garbage pickup by the county where the roads will permit, and they have to allow roundabout access, and that is why the county gets involved with condominium plan, site plan reviews. So there will be pickup if they don't have to back up. So there are a number of condo corporations that do receive county pickup and some that don't.
Thank you.
So Madam Chair, just as a follow-up, I'll follow up with Marjorie to have a better understanding of what that calculation or transition was at that time and if it's changed. Thanks.
Yeah, great. I've made note of that question as well. Okay. Councillor Hamlin.
Yeah, thank you. Just lastly, and I definitely heard our deputy mayor's comments on buyer beware and hire a good real estate person and so on. But I just wanted to add my comment that, you know, in my view, the Condominium Act and all that protection there is consumer protection driven, because consumers were not getting very good, having a very good understanding about the condominium, you know, what they were getting into. And really that's my fear with all of this, and why I'm making such a big statement about it is I just don't think that we have the level of consumer protection that's needed through the condominium process for these private. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Just in the interest of transparency, I'm not conveying hiring a good real estate person. I'm conveying hiring a good lawyer.
Touche. Okay, we have had, I think, pretty fulsome discussion on this staff report. So I will read the motion. Moved by Member Mayor Saunderson, seconded by Member Deputy Mayor Hull, that Council receives Staff Report P 2020-17, Private Roads in Condominium Developments for information purposes. And I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, our next item is 6.2, Staff Report P 2020-22, extension of draft approval for plan of subdivision Trails of Collingwood. And I will turn that over to Director Farr.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council, our committee. This is a report that recommends the extension of draft plan approval for draft plan of subdivision located at High Street. Next slide, please. And Telfer Road. This is in the southwest corner of Collingwood. This is a draft plan of subdivision which has previously received approval and been extended several times. The application is, I guess, matched by two concurrent, the draft plan approval, my apologies, is paralleled by two concurrent applications for rezoning and draft plan revision to allow for the stockpiling and storage of material that has been flagged as contaminated as a result of arsenic and other farming contaminants. Next slide, please. As you can see from this drawing, there's a mix of development proposed across the site. At the eastern limit of the property, there's a proposed berm. And there's a proposal for those lands specifically that indicate to be rezoned to allow this berm that would allow for stockpiling. The town has a peer reviewer who is providing commentary and advice regarding this aspect of the development. The matter of contaminated lands and their acceptability through various different remediation processes, including stockpiling materials on the property. This is all set out and approved by the Ministry of the Environment. The recommendation of our consultants to the applicant's consultants is that they continue to do technical work on this file, and to the town, that the town reviews and receives submissions from the applicant to the Ministry of Environment, provides commentary to the Ministry of Environment, of course, we'll be continuing to use our peer reviewer through that work. One of the matters of interest to town staff and that is included in the recommendations for your consideration is the addition of a draft plan condition to this extension that requires that the developer meet current development standards that may be applied on other more recent development applications where staff are seeking greater certainty and predictability in urban design and architectural control across these sites. Similarly, there are broad conditions that allow the staff to have technical matters resolved to the satisfaction of the respective directors' positions, and that any other matters be addressed. This condition is included in the proposed draft plan conditions that would be extended to provide council and committee with some certainty and security that the development will meet the standards that are consistent with council's expectations. As I indicated earlier, there are parallel applications for a zoning bylaw amendment and a revision to facilitate this berm. As part of those applications, staff would provide a more detailed and comprehensive update of the conditions to address those matters that are referenced in that broad condition. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Director Farr. Are there any comments from members of the public?
There's no hands raised. If anyone wants to speak, please raise your hand or put a comment in the chat feature. And there's nobody wishing to speak.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Okay, I will turn it over to committee. Comments, questions? Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, usually I have been much in agreement with our director of planning. He does such a good job, but I'm going to take the position again to oppose the recommendation in our staff report here tonight. I am of the view that we should not, as I understood it, we're postponing again or the request is postpone and to allow an extension of the draft plan approval so that the developer can continue to look at options for storing of contaminated soil on site, including arsenic. And I am the view that we should not, as a community, be allowing the storing of contaminated soil in our community. There are clear processes for cleaning contaminated sites that have been used across the province for decades. There are dumps, or however you want to call them, where this soil can be taken to. And I just think this is a very bad practice for us to make a precedent of. I am so aware that we have contaminated soil on our waterfront. I feel this is an embarrassment to our community and should not be there. I would not extend this draft approval to allow extra time to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Hall.
On that note, I guess, through you to the Director of Planning, I understand what Councillor Hamlin is saying. I don't disagree with what she's saying. Though, if we were to move this forward, though, with the provision that they have a year to continue, can it not be messaged, if it was the will of council, that they've got a year to continue to move forward, but it is in a different manner, as the councillor suggested? In other words, they remediate the site and look at alternatives of removing the soil elsewhere. Sorry, just to maybe further, because if we don't grant the extension, then this developer is back to square one, correct?
Director Farr.
Through you, Madam Chair. The the ability to stockpile materials on a site as a way of mitigating their, let's say, broad spread existence across a property is an option that is made available not by the municipality but by the province. It's one of the listed options available to proponents. That being said, staff, as I indicated, have an opportunity to peer review the correspondence between the applicant and the Ministry of the Environment and to provide recommendations accordingly for the ministry's consideration. The question of whether if the plan conditions were to lapse, whether they were to be extended for a year then expire, or not be, maybe I'll put it differently, not be renewed by council, is garners a response in two ways. First of all, we have a view that lapsing provisions can be appealed to the LPAT. I know there's been some discussion among council as to whether that's accurate. However, I've been looking into it, and my assessment through that review that is the case. But really the question is if it was not renewed, where would that leave the applicant? They would still have the same official plan framework, the same zoning bylaw framework, except that which is specific to the stockpiling, and they would still have the same Ministry of Environment regulations. So the question really is there a significant gain to be made in not extending at this point? Well, we believe that that this additional condition that we've proposed, which we've conveyed to the applicant, provides the municipality with some additional benefits as it comes to reviewing this in an area where we have influence. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that they still have to go to the province. They still have to seek a certification from the ministry, and the ministry still allows stockpiling on the site. So it's not necessarily restricted to a municipal decision.
Thank you, Director Farr. Other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer, and I'm inclined to support this, to move it forward to council, and then I'll follow up with some questions. I mean, this site has been one that's been in the works for years. I remember meeting with a developer representative. I think his name was Helmut Strobel, prior to 2010. I think it was maybe somewhere around 2008. It might even have been earlier. And the planner of record was Colin Travis. We were talking about, donation of lots at that time to Habitat for Humanity. I mean, there's been so many sort of reiterations of this particular site and the site layout. Even the construction of the roads, et cetera. So I just, and then of course, they did get approvals to go ahead in the early 2010s. I don't know if it was 10, 11, to clear cut. They've clear cut to the point where the trees have grown back. I know they're scrub, but I mean, that's how much time has lapsed over this process. So I'm going to follow up, if I may, directly with the director. I'll copy others, but I would be interested to know, between the time that the site was clear cut and some of the soil samples were removed, that's a significant period of time. What has taken this particular development in the best real estate market that we've ever seen or witnessed, this amount of time to answer the questions that they're now trying to have answered in the next year?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Adam, just so we're clear. The approval of the environmental remediation, what's the approval authority for that?
It's through you, Madam Chair. This is it's the Ministry of Environment.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, does the municipality have a say in the remediation process other than a peer review? Can we make recommendations to the MOE?
Through you, Madam Chair. That's the direction and advice of our peer review consultant, is that in fact, yeah, we have that opportunity to make recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Okay, I will make a comment. I'm inclined to be in agreement with Councillor Hamlin, Vice Chair Hamlin, in regard to her comments, the storage of contaminated soils on site. Further to that, I note that this development is 22 years old, this application. The original was October 20th, 2008. It has now survived at least one and now two official plan reviews. The director has alluded to the fact that he is discussing with the proponent considerations relative to architectural design. I think this speaks to one of our objectives with an official plan review, is to have better design for our communities. This development is now consistent with an old OP relative to green space, trail connectivity, compatibility with surrounding neighborhoods, transitions from surrounding neighborhoods, and we have seen this over and over again to be an issue in our new development applications. So I would not support this request for an extension. So if there are no further comments, I will read the motion. Moved by Member Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Member Councillor Jeffrey, that staff report P 2020-22 extension of draft approval for a plan of subdivision Trails of Collingwood be received, and that council extend the draft approval for the proposed Trails of Collingwood plan of subdivision for a further year or until October 20th, 2021. Call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, and that is carried 3-2. Thank you. Okay, moving on then to item 6.3. Staff report PW 2020-14. Environmental Services 2020 mid-year operations update. Over to you, Director Salama.
Thank you, Chair. Manager Heather McGinnity is with us this evening, and she will walk the committee through the update, the mid-year update on the Environmental Services Department.
Thank you. Manager McGinnity, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Director Slama. Yes, so this, I guess we can advance the slide, sorry. This presentation and the accompanying report has been prepared to provide the committee with an update on the operational and maintenance activities completed and currently in progress in the town's drinking water and wastewater systems in 2020. So this information is being shared to help council as they fulfill their responsibilities as drinking water system owners under the Safe Drinking Water Act, otherwise known as the Standard of Care. So topics today we'll talk about quickly are drinking water production rates, treated sewage volumes, water main breaks, bypass events at the wastewater plant, maintenance work, capital project updates, and we'll finish with a quick staffing update. So this slide shows a summary of our drinking water production rates at the water treatment plant in 2020 and compared to the same time period in 2018 and 2019. So you'll notice that Collingwood and New Tecumseth have seen a slight reduction in demands, while the town of Blue Mountain demands continue to slightly increase. Mainly, council will be happy to know that our maximum daily production has remained below 80% of the plant capacity so far this year, with it peaked at about 79% or 24,576 cubic meters per day in mid-July. Next slide. So utility locate requests have significantly increased, I'm sure you're aware, since legislation was passed in 2012, and with the requirement for municipalities to register with one call. And we've noticed that despite the COVID pandemic, we saw an increase in home improvement projects that required digging, and which resulted in locates remaining almost on par with 2019. So the pandemic didn't have any noticeable impact on our service level requirements for utility locates this year. Next slide. In the first half of 2020, we repaired 5 water main breaks, so 6th Street, Napier Street, Huron and Niagara Street, the intersection there, Cameron Street, and on Highway 26. So most of these repairs were completed immediately, and operators attempted to complete the repairs while maintaining system pressures. However, most of these repairs required a short local outage of water supply. Next slide. In terms of water maintenance programs, we completed some required preventative maintenance on the duty pump at Davie Reservoir. However, following its recommissioning, seal started to leak, and that's required us to take it out of service again, complete some additional repairs. And we're also looking at repairing the flex coupling or discharge piping associated with this pump. So this is something that this pump is now back out of service, and we're waiting for these additional repairs to be completed. We've replaced all 3 gas chlorinators or upgraded them to meet our increased operating requirements. We purchased some new confined space air quality testing equipment, and we're also increasing our water testing and sampling for suspended solids and microsystem parameters. And this is to satisfy the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks requirements. Next slide. So for water capital projects, we've managed to stay fairly on schedule and on track with our capital program this year, despite the COVID restrictions. We proceeded with some schedule delays for our our water treatment plant municipal class environmental assessment. So over the summer, our notice of completion was issued, and we're looking to wrap that up in the next couple of weeks. We proceeded with the water treatment plant roof repair project, so that's currently under construction. And Ulster Bluff booster pumping station upgrades, we've issued that tender. The tender has closed, and we're looking to award and hopefully start construction this fall, but it may not make it this year and may start next year. Construction will likely be completed next year. Napier Street and Campbell Street water main replacements are well underway. Basically, new water mains have been recommissioned, and those projects are wrapping up. The Stewart Road Reservoir Booster Pumping Station and 10th Line Water Main, we're going through the design with the anticipation that we'll be able to tender that construction project early next year. And the contract has been awarded for the elevated water tower repair. So you'll start to notice some activity on that site in the next week or so, anticipating that construction the repairs will be completed by mid-October. The Carmichael Reservoir and Booster Pumping Station upgrades are under design right now. Next slide. So on the wastewater side, we're continuing to notice a slight increase in sewage flows at the wastewater plant for the same period over the past 3 years. However, our average daily flows are still well within the treatment capacity of the facility. Next slide. As council is aware, there was a partial sewage treatment bypass on June 23rd, and this was the result of a significant rain event that caused a surge of sewage to reach the wastewater plant. Because it was a partial bypass, all the sewage went through the majority of the plant, so solids and organics were removed, but only a small portion, approximately 1,500 cubic meters, bypassed the UV disinfection process. And this effluent was treated with chlorine PEX instead of UV for disinfection. Regulatory agencies were all notified of this event, and no further action is required by the town at this time. For the wastewater maintenance, we have completed our flow meter and pressure meter calibrations. The supernate pump had a full rebuild, and a gear joint was replaced on the waste activated sludge pump. They've done some alignment on the pump and motor for the sludge loading pump, and primary clarifiers 1, 2, 3, and secondary clarifier number 2. They were all drained, had annual maintenance and inspections, and repairs were completed as required. On the wastewater capital side, we were able to move forward and continue on with our generator replacement project at the plant. So that was, construction was completed late spring and it was commissioned, and now we're currently in the warranty phase. The wastewater treatment plant brick replacement and masonry repairs. So phase 1 is substantially completed just recently, and we've gone ahead and issued phase 2 for tendering and reviewing bids at this time. So we're hoping to award that and hopefully get some of that work started this fall. The sludge transfer pump replacement project, so that's currently in design. So we have our engineers working on that with the anticipation that will go to construction next year. Painting at the Minnesota sewage pumping station is underway. Contract is awarded, and I think the contractor is on site this week to start painting. Black Ash Creek sewage pumping station is under construction. We're nearing the end of the road for that one. Looking to have a major switchover happen in the next week or two. So hopefully mid-October we'll be able to have the new sewage pumping station up and running, and the old one fully disconnected from our system. So the last update relating to our staffing situation, there's been a few changes in our division this past this year, we'll say. The manager of environmental services, myself, I was hired back in March. And the manager of wastewater also, he retired in March as well and was filled with a new supervisor position instead of a manager. That was an internal hire, a promotion from our wastewater laboratory technician. She was successful with this job. And so then we had to fill the laboratory technician position. So that was filled internally as well this August. And now we're looking to recruit 2 wastewater treatment operators. So one to fill the operator who accepted the laboratory technician position, and another operator who resigned this summer. And that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much, and be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Oh, thank you very much,
problem.
Mr. McGinnity. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public?
Matt Pretty has his hand up if you would allow him to speak.
Yes, Matthew, go ahead, please.
Just give me 1 second here. You should be good, Matt.
Okay, very good. I just unmuted. Okay, I have a question regarding the sanitation sewer system. I have a concern regarding inflow coming from the swamp that's between the courthouse and Niagara Street. I was actually down at the Harbor Road today. The wave action is quite significant. I notice there's a lot of construction prepping for Highway 26 Huron. Are you considering a break wall for storm surge and sanitary sewage increases along 26 to offload water that will flood Highway 26? I think the town should be quite alarmed. It's coming. There's going to be a surge going right over that highway. It needs to be buffered. It needs to be walled. It needs to be the ducks and the animals that migrate and live in that swamp. We don't want to see them on the highway getting run over. There is a real issue with ecology in this town that a fellow ran over a raccoon yesterday at Freshie. He just stepped on his tail, proceeded to run over it. I stopped him from doing it. It was disgusting. He just ran into his car, didn't care one bit. Got his food and off he went, in his brand new Volkswagen. I was so disturbed. Law enforcement does not do animal control pickup on weekends. That's something I want to talk about town with. But what are we doing about 26 Lake Huron, or the Huron Road? Here comes the storm surge, and what's the town doing about it? I'm concerned. I want answers.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask Director Slom to answer that question for you.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Pretty. So this is something that, of course, just like Mr. Pretty is aware of and noticing, we are noticing as well. And you know, engineering is taking a look at you know, if there's items that we need to consider you know, when we look at these high lake levels and as they're coming back in. So you know, this is a little outside of the staff report we're looking at right now. But I will say, right, staff understands Mr. Pretty's concerns, and you know, we can look at the options there.
Thank you, Director Slama. Any other comments from members of the public? Deputy Clerk?
I don't see any other comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will turn it over to committee for questions or comments. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to Manager McGinnity. Just briefly on the wastewater bypass, partial bypass incident, is this something that will continue to happen with similar rainfall experiences? And are we, I saw that we did all the proper protocol and everything was cleared the way it should be. But is it something that we address going forward to have a solution for, or the pucks in the pipe, the solution? I was just wondering.
Thank you, Director Slama or Manager McGinnity.
I can try to answer. So through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Jeffrey. Yes, it is something that will likely happen, unfortunately, as we're seeing more of these high intensity rainfall events. But we do have a plan to improve, and you know, we are doing condition assessment on our sewers, which is where some of this inflow is happening. So there is a plan in place to base on condition target areas and try to do some repairs to try to minimize the amount of inflow that's happening during these significant rain events. So unfortunately, it's not completely avoidable, but we are doing what we can, and we'll be doing what we can over the next many years to try to help mitigate the impact of this.
Thank you very much. I thought it was an excellent report, but it just came to mind that I hadn't seen any reference to the go forward planning in terms of trying to prohibit it. So thank you for that.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And congratulations to your staff, Heather, for this report and the external audit that was done in July that found 0 non-conformances. My question really relates to the backflow program. I know it's been delayed because of the COVID crisis. When do you expect to be able to get that up and running again?
Through you, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so the backflow program is actually up and running again. So we did kind of stage it over the summer as restrictions across the province lifted. We didn't want to be the first person knocking at business owners' doors saying, we want you to do more work, spend some more money. So we wanted to give some time for them to readjust and get back into the groove for business, hopefully, as whatever business as usual is now. So we are fully up and running again. We just sent the latest batch of letters out notifying property owners of their requirements to assess backflow requirements and move forward with installations.
Great, that's good to hear. And just as a follow-up, so from the report, we've done about 1/3 of the inspections necessary. Are we hoping to have the balance of the inspections done by year end, or what's the target date?
Sorry, for the entire program or just for the existing?
For the existing.
Yes, they're supposed to be inspected annually.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just have one question. And it's having to do with the overflow that we experience with stormwater through the wastewater treatment plant. Do we, as a matter of course, test the water quality in the harbor after such an event?
Madam Chair, that's not typically a standard procedure. Our operators typically just monitor the quality of the effluent that we're discharging. So we don't have the equipment to facilitate something like that. But in this particular instance, we did coordinate with Parks to kind of look at the harbor, because there was some complaints subsequently, not related to our discharges, but some people were concerned about the quality of the water in the harbor and potential connections to the wastewater plant. So we did do some sampling and coordination with Parks on that, but that's not our standard practice, and it isn't a requirement it's by the ministry either.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, if there are no further comments, I will read in the motion. Moved by Member Councillor Jeffrey and seconded by Member Councillor Hamlin. The council received staff report P 2020-14 Environmental Services 2020 Mid-Year Operations Update for information purposes. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next up. 6.4, PW 2020-15, MTO Beechwood Road and Highway 26 Memorandum of Understanding. And this is this Director Slama?
It is. Thank you, Chair Doherty. I'll speak to this staff report this evening, but Manager Cole, I believe, is connected and would be able to answer any questions if there's particular questions following my summary. So starting in 2018, the Ministry of Transportation started the reconstruction of the intersection of Highway 26 on the east end of town, where it intersects with Beechwood Road and Sanford Fleming. This reconstruction also included an extended portion of Highway 26 that's within the town's jurisdiction to Pretty River Parkway. And it was a big project for our town, and really helps facilitate and move traffic on the east end of town. A great improvement for us. That was a long time we were waiting for that work. The intersection falls under the jurisdiction of the MTO currently, so it's their ownership and their responsibility. But the long-term plan is that the ministry would transfer ownership and responsibilities of that intersection to the town. So knowing that this would be coming down the pipe in the short term, when they were looking at design of the intersection, there was consultation between MTO and the town, and it was decided that the traffic infrastructure, the traffic lights and the road illumination would be constructed to town standards, so that it provides some long-term consistency with respect to operations and compatibility with our infrastructure throughout the rest of town. So to support this consistency in operation, the ministry and the town also came to an agreement that Collingwood would facilitate the maintenance of this infrastructure at the intersection through our maintenance contracts that we procure annually, and that the costs of this work would be reimbursed by the MTO. So with this, I'm forgetting, Aaron, to ask you to advance the slides. My apologies. So this slide is just an overview of the intersection. So this is the east end of town, Highway 26 and Beechwood Road. And now there is a connection to Sanford Fleming Drive. So with the staff report, staff are proposing that the town enter into a memorandum of understanding with the ministry with respect to details of this agreement, And in the memorandum of understanding that was provided with the staff report, you'll see that the ministry would still be responsible for signal timing and investigation of signal timing, and also pavement markings on the Highway 26. But Collingwood would look after the maintenance of the traffic control signals and the road illumination. This memorandum of understanding also includes various road and traffic elements, what each party will look after and what they will maintain. And it acknowledges that any cost that would be the responsibility of the ministry will be paid back to the town. The ministry is in agreement with a 5% administration fee. And the agreement is that the ministry will reimburse the costs on an annual basis. And I'll just show a couple of pictures in the slideshow, if you could advance the slide, please. So this is just a photo of the intersection, which shows the traffic signals, which again are constructed to town standards. So we will look after the maintenance of those. And the next slide, please. And that's just a photo of one of the luminaires. So I'm prepared to answer any questions that the committee may have on the memorandum of understanding.
Thank you very much, Director Slomo. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? Deputy Clerk, is there anyone there?
No one has raised their hand, so I'll presume that there's no one watching to speak tonight.
Thank you. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I just have one question myself. When will the municipality be taking over jurisdiction of Beechwood through to Fairgrounds Road, or the town bound, or sorry, yeah, Fairgrounds Road, town boundary?
So the town is still working on that transfer of the ownership of that road with the ministry. I don't have a timeline for you now, but we do continue to do our best to advance that transfer of ownership.
Do we have any ability to influence the province to change the speed limits on Beechwood? There have been over the years a number of complaints from residents about the speed of traffic. I note that the town of the Blue Mountains was able to get a speed reduction in Craigleith in about a week. I think we've been working on this for about 2 years. Can you help enlighten me on that one?
I'll ask if Manager Cole has any background information on our request with the ministry with respect to the speed limits, if he's aware.
Manager
we can
Cole?
see you, but we can't hear you yet.
Yeah, so my apologies, Madam Chair. I was actually just removed from the meeting at the time you asked that question.
So the question was if we have any ability to influence the ministry with respect to the speed limits on Beechwood.
So we have no formal ability to influence. However, staff are willing to reach out and have some open conversations with our counterparts at the ministry in that regards.
Thank you. And I think it would be great to use the recent example from Craigleith as a reference for how quickly it can happen. And that's all I'll say about that. Okay, so if there are no further questions or comments, I'll read the motion. Moved by Member Councillor Hamlin, seconded by Member Mayor Saunderson, that Council receives staff report PW 2020-15, Ministry of Transportation, Beechwood Road and Highway 26 Memorandum of Understanding, and that council provide delegated authority to the Director of Public Works, Engineering and Environmental Services to finalize and enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Director of Central Operations, Ministry of Transportation for the maintenance of traffic safety infrastructure and illumination devices as indicated within this report. And I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next up. Item 6.5, Public Works 2020-16, Wastewater Treatment Plant Generator Replacement Update. And I will turn that over to, I guess, either Director Slama or Manager McGinnity.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Manager McGinnity will speak to the staff report this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So just wanted to speak to this report and provide the committee with an update on the generator replacement project at our wastewater treatment plant. So first slide. So the wastewater treatment plant generator is a critical asset for us. It powers the treatment plant during power outages and ensures our effluent quality is maintained during these emergency periods. So back in 2018, it was determined that over $100,000 worth of repairs were required to maintain the generator. So the decision was made to replace the generator due to its condition and age. Next slide. Construction on the generator commenced in 2019 with the tender being awarded late in the year. And construction continued through the COVID pandemic, and new generator was commissioned in late spring of 2020. The contractor was able to complete the generator construction within the awarded contract amount. However, a subsequent review of the project financials determined that insufficient funds were requested as part of the 2020 budget process to cover these construction costs. So staff are requesting that council authorize an additional $110,000 be transferred from the wastewater reserves to fully fund the construction for this project in 2020. The wastewater reserve fund balance is over $17 million. Therefore, sufficient funding is available to cover these costs. And just so council is aware, as a generator construction equipment will be under warranty into 2021, staff are going to be requesting some additional funding as part of the 2021 budget process to cover engineering fees related to potential warranty related issues from the generator over the warranty period. So it's short and to the point. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
You're on mute.
Sorry, comments, comments or questions from members of the public?
If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, if you could please raise your hand or put a comment in the chats feature. And it looks like there's no comments for this presentation.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Comments or questions from members of the committee? Okay, then, seeing none, I will read the motion. Moved by Member Mayor Saunderson, seconded by Member Deputy Mayor Hull, that staff report PW 2020-16 wastewater treatment plant generator replacement update be received, and that an additional $110,000 be transferred from the wastewater reserve fund to the diesel generator replacement capital project. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Next, we have reports and minutes of other committees and boards. And we have the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes of July 27th, 2020. Are there any questions or comments from anyone in the audience in regard to these minutes?
No one has their hand raised and there's no comments in the chat.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee? Deputy Mayor Hull.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to briefly comment to item 6.1 is under deputations within the minutes. And it's a comment that I've made prior, and I just want to preface my comments by saying that I value the Heritage District and I value the work that's been done to create what we have today, because it's the real deal and it's special. But there have been a number of examples of inconsistencies and, or, in my opinion, and I stress my opinion, missed opportunities. And I should also preface it by saying that I haven't spoken to anybody about this, and I'm not raising this issue on behalf of anyone. This is just simply an observation I'm making. This property, if those aren't familiar with the address, it's on the southeast corner of here, Ontario and Hume. It's a building and a half behind what used to be, I'm not sure what's there now, but it used to be Elaine Dickinson's. And it is a one-story single-tier building set back from the road. And the reason I raise it is that I think it is time that heritage is reviewed in the context of moving forward to allow for some aggressive thinking as it relates to architecture. We see, and all you have to do is start and drive some of our streets throughout the community, and you start to see some really interesting architectural juxtapositions from home to home. And give you an example of something similar to this, although it has to do with a fence, not with an actual building. But if you're driving down 6th Street west, and you get to the corner of, it would be on the northeast corner of Birch and 6th Street, there is a home that at one point, I believe, probably was maybe built around shortly after the war. I'm not sure if it was a wartime house or not. Doesn't matter. It's had a lovely addition put on the back. But on the fence side of Birch Street, they have put in a really, really interesting corrugated metal fence. It's an adjacent to a red brick 2-story home that also fronts onto Birch Street. The contrast in materials is fantastic. Again, my opinion only. You know, for those who love art, there are people who enjoy one particular type of art or medium, one particular artist versus another, and architecture is no difference. But it's just, I think that we really need to encourage, I'm not sure what the process is. Maybe I'll revisit this with staff and then come forward with some type of a recommendation. But again, we have a jewel in our downtown. We have a jewel in our historic district or heritage district. But I think it is time that we revisit sort of some of the pillars that establish the district to appreciate and understand the materials that are available today, the architecture that is available today, so that we can create these opportunities for people to enhance, not to take away, but to enhance the buildings that they're purchasing and really create something quite unique and special that, in my opinion, would create these juxtapositions that create these really interesting features. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's a complex question for sure. If there are no other questions or comments, I just had one question. We are shy of one member on the Heritage Committee, and I know that that was going to be part of a review of the composition of all of our committees and boards. And I've had an inquiry as to what the status of that review was at the moment. Deputy Clerk, can you enlighten us?
It is on our project list at the moment, and we are working on it. I can't confirm, but I will probably say in the November Corporate and Community Standing Committee meeting, something will be coming forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'll just read the motion that the minutes of the, moved by Member Deputy Mayor Hull and seconded by Member Councillor Jeffrey, that the minutes of the Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting held July 27th, 2020 be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and then departmental updates. We have the EPCAR Liaison Committee update from the mayor and myself, and I believe that Director Saloma has a matter that she would like to update us on as well, which is not actually on the agenda right at the moment. So, Mayor Saunderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we missed the consent agenda, though. I don't know if you want to cover that off before we move on. It's item number 8.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, you are absolutely right. Consent agenda. And there is one item on the consent agenda from the All Saints Cemetery Board, and it is in regard to cemetery lands rezoning. Are there any questions? Actually, maybe I will just ask staff if they can briefly comment on that request, and then I'll flip it over to the public and committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request by a representative of the Anglican Church who owns those lands to have a portion of the lands designated for industrial development as part of the official plan update. The letter that's been submitted is asking for a fee waiver to facilitate independently filed applications. However, I've been in discussion with the representative, Mr. Emo, regarding the nature of his request, and I understand that it's his intent that the matter be referred under the council approved process at council's direction to the director of planner position and the consultant for consideration as part of the official plan update. If it fails the test for being included, then we would then further pursue this request for the waiver.
Okay, thank you. So they can hang on to their money right now, and we will have yourselves and our consultants look at it as part of the OP process. Great. I'm sure that former Mayor Emo will be happy to hear that he doesn't have to spend any money just quite yet. Okay, are there any questions from members of the public on this consent agenda item?
I'm just confirming with Matthew Pretty. It looks like he wants to speak about another item, so I'm suggesting he speak to it under the delegation section of the agenda.
Yes, that sounds appropriate. Thank you.
Oh, he's saying this one, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Pretty.
Okay, Matt, you should be able to speak.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. I just unmuted. Okay, my question is for Director Farr. He would know this proposal I know the Anglican Church was wanting to do an addition between the rectory and the church for housing purposes. Is this sale of land going towards some kind of build in relation to the All Saints Anglican Church, or is this Mr. Ron Emo, former mayor of Collingwood in the 80s, is this his own private land that he operates the cemetery privately, or is this for the build and proposal at the Anglican Church for the 3-story home? Thank you, and that is my question.
Director Farr?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the member of the public. This is a request on behalf of the Anglican Church by Mr. Emo, who's a part of the leadership of that group, asking that a portion of the Anglican Church's cemetery, which is not, it's designated for a cemetery, but not being used as a cemetery, be redesignated so that the church can dispose of the unused portion of the property on the open market and the proceeds returned to the church.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pretty, is that answer your question? Great, okay, thank you. Committee members, comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Hall.
I was surprised just that the correspondence that came in didn't actually reference the property. There was no address, no reference. I mean, it happens to be located at the corner of Raglan and coincidentally Ron Emo Drive, but I think that should be part of the record.
Okay, thank you. I guess staff will make note of that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then I will read the motion that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by the Standing Committee, be received. And that's just one item, the All Saints Cemetery Board Cemetery Lands rezoning. Now I'll call the question. And that is carried unanimously. And there is a secondary motion with this item. And that's moved by member Councillor Hamlin, seconded by member Mayor Saunderson, that the request for redesignation in the official plan update for All Saints Cemetery be referred to staff for review. So all in favor? And that's also carried unanimously. Okay, terrific. Now we can go on to departmental updates. Mayor Saunderson, EPCOR.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So both Chair Doherty and I will be speaking to this item. I thought that I would speak to the history and the mandate of the committee, and then Chair Doherty could speak to some of the action items more recently. So as part of the EPCOR purchase of Collis, it was agreed as part of their offer that they would strike a municipal advisory committee to meet at least 4 times a year to provide a liaison between town and EPCOR to look at concerns from the viewpoints of the town of Collingwood and to receive information and to allow us to provide input related to emerging issues in the electric utility industry, as well as potential impacts on our community, customers, and the environment. So it was agreed that it would be a membership of 6, and in regards to EPCOR, they could select up to 3 representatives, and the town of Collingwood could elect up to 3 representatives as well. So we have met now, I think have had 5 meetings. The first meeting was on June 24 of last year, and then we met again on October 28. And this year we have met on July 20, April 20, January 20, April 20, and July 20. And we have one more meeting to go, at least one more meeting this year. The committee has been struck for a term of 36 months and can be extended if the parties feel it is worthwhile and productive. The committee members have been appointed for the same 36-month term, and that can be extended or re-examined if we agree to continue on with what we're calling the MAC, Municipal Advisory Committee. And nobody is paid for their time on the committee. While the meetings are reported out to the public, they are not public meetings, and the input of each member is treated confidentially. While the reports that come out will identify the issues as addressed. And I would just comment that it has been a very productive relationship, I think, so far. EPCOR was a willing and active partner when we were looking at our COVID measures. They were instrumental in providing one of our key data points, which was energy consumption during the first few months of the COVID crisis. And they have certainly showed themselves to be an active and contributor to our community and a good corporate citizen. And with that, I will hand it over to Chair Doherty.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So I'll just speak briefly to some of the highlights of our most recent meeting, which was in July. Primary focus, as the Mayor alluded, was the pandemic relief efforts. EPCOR have been very active there. They have been accepting flexible payment arrangements. They have been waiving interest payments. And they have also extended the disconnection moratorium until July 31st, which is now passed. But they're working with customers to get back on track and to avoid disconnection, except as an extreme last resort, by the end of September. And then also, as the Mayor alluded, they provided very useful information to the Economic Support and Recovery Task Force in the form of energy consumption as one of our data points that we would use as a tracking of our economic recovery in our dashboard. EPCOR will be facilitating the rollout of the COVID-19 Energy Assistance Program for small business. And I know there's a number of small businesses in town that are very interested in this support package. How it works, it provides a one-time on-bill credit to eligible small businesses and registered charity customers to help them catch up on their energy bills and resume regular payments. They may be eligible for up to $850 in support toward their electricity bill if they primarily use electricity for heating, and up to $425 otherwise. Small business and registered charity customers could also be eligible for up to $425 in on-bill credits in support of their natural gas bill. If you are a business that's interested in taking advantage of this offer, then please, you can reach out to EPCOR either by phone or online, and they will provide you with all of the details as to eligibility criteria and executional elements of the relief package. So that should be of great interest to our business community. They also informed us that the reduced time of use rates, as per the Ministry of Energy rates, would stay in effect through until November 1st, 2020. So that also will be a help to everyone, both businesses and residents. There has been some correspondence between the town and EPCOR in regard to Heritage Drive and the Heritage Drive upgrades. The town is working with EPCOR to address the nature of future upgrades and timing for Heritage Drive. And finally, and this is of interest, I know, to a lot of people in town, the EV charging stations, which many people are talking about. The town and EPCOR are waiting right now for a formal announcement to be made regarding the status of the NRCan funding for local charging stations. And in the meantime, a staff meeting between EPCOR and our staff will be coordinated to align technical feasibility, location, and funding options. And this will be coordinated by the town. I guess I should also mention on a human interest standpoint that there were a number of hydro poles that were impeding the progress of spotted turtles to make their way toward water this summer down by Heritage Drive. And when this issue was flagged to EPCOR staff, the poles were removed in pretty short order. So a great corporate citizen and a great group of people to work with. And that's my summary, unless there's any other questions. Okay, seeing none, Director Slama, I understand that you had some other business that you wanted to bring council and members of the public up to date on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just if I could, I know these aren't on the agenda, but we have received some questions over the last few days. So I'd like to provide an update on the Hurontario crosswalk, the Hurontario sidewalk, and the accessible shuttle service. And also I'll start with those, if I may. So the Hurontario crosswalk at Hamilton Drain, this crosswalk is still not in operation, or was taken out of operation due to some vandalism earlier this summer. And unfortunately, the crosswalk is still not in operation. And the primary reason for that is, as we noted when we first did report that it wasn't operating, we knew right away there was going to be a problem obtaining some of the repair parts due to some supply shortages due to the pandemic. So we are still waiting for those parts. We are hopeful they will be received this week and that the crosswalk can be repaired. So we are keeping our fingers crossed for that. In the last few days, we have received some assistance from the OPP and our own bylaw department, who have provided some support on site. They've been on site and present during the busy times, which we're focusing primarily when some of the children are going to and from school. So for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the later afternoon. So the OPP and in some cases our bylaw officers have been helping to guide users to cross the road when it is safe to do so. But still, you know, that the crosswalk is still not operational. Like there are the lights. We have bagged the lights so that drivers understand that no lights will be operating. If we do not receive the parts, the repair parts by midweek, staff are going to give some consideration to erecting some more signage and possibly barriers on the trail that just help remind parents and children and users of the crosswalk that unfortunately is not operating as a crosswalk. and they need to be mindful. Like unfortunately, pedestrians will need to go. They can only cross the road when it is safe to do so, like in other locations. Like I said, the OPP and bylaw have been able to provide us with some assistance, but our own bylaw department will be short some people at the end of this week. And I know that the OPP have been placing an officer there, and I'm not sure how long they can dedicate that officers that time. So we are continuing to work with the contractor. We are trying to apply pressure as best we can. We are hoping this can be fixed as soon as possible, but that is the situation. Was there any questions on the crosswalk before I move on to the next item?
Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, thank you for that update. I know a lot of people are interested to know the timing of that. I'm just wondering, the part that we're waiting for, is it coming from out of the country, or what is the,
Yes, that's my understanding. Sorry, through the chair, yes.
Okay, because I just wanted, through you, Madam Chair, sorry. I just wanted to leave a thought for staff that in terms of procurement policies and items of such high safety as this, that perhaps we consider where replacement parts have to come from as part of, contracts that are awarded. Because globalization seems to have fallen flat on its face during COVID, and we hope it'll well, anyway, who knows where all this is going. But I know a lot of people are concerned that this crosswalk is used by the kids. There's schools on both sides of here, Ontario, obviously, in that general location. And I don't know if there's, I guess my question on my second question, and then I'll be quiet on this, is what is the protocol or best practice when you do have a crossing that's set up and children are using it for school purposes, and then the crosswalk's taken out of service? What are parents, how are they supposed to know, and what's the best protocol for this?
Through the chair, if I may, to Councillor Hamlin. So we did, as soon as the crosswalk had to be taken out of operation, right? We did, provide our notification on our website, through our social media outlets as best we could. For the drivers, we bagged the lights, and we did bag the crosswalk signs, so drivers were aware. And then at the crosswalk, we did put some notification over the button to indicate that it wasn't operating. And I'm not sure if you have, I'm not sure what else we could have done, and maybe you have some suggestions on different forms of communication for that.
Yeah, no, I'm just, it's just one, I'm very happy that we've had coverage there this week, because little kids might not really know what to do. I just don't, it's a thorny question, that's for sure. Okay, thank you.
And I think, if it doesn't get repaired this week, that's why we'd like to expand our notification, right? And take it maybe to the trailhead at Pretty River Estates, right? Because it is a good point. It's difficult if parents are sending young children to school on their own, and I fully support independence. But if it includes having to cross a busy road, that's difficult. We'd certainly prefer if a parent can guide a child at least across here, Ontario, and then let them go on their way the rest of the way to school.
And just, if I may, Madam Chair, just a last comment, because I live down that area and I often cross here, Ontario, not exactly in that spot, but not far. I know how fast the traffic tends to really speed up as it's coming south, particularly past the end of the high school. The drivers can see clear sailing all the way to the lights at Poplar, and well, some of the vehicles really booted through there. I can tell you they're not going 60. So, anyway, thank you for your attention to this. Thank you.
In the absence of the chair, oh, here she is. I'll move on to my second item. Oh,
I'm terribly sorry. I'm trying to quiet my dog. I see Deputy Mayor Hall would like to speak as well.
I do have a question to sort of dovetail on Councillor Hamlin's last observation, and it may not be one that can be answered, and if it can't, if we could maybe get a follow-up. I think we were all anticipated. It was the previous council that made the decision to put this crosswalk in, and or the light anyways, and applaud them for doing so. And I certainly grew up, I think, with the other form that had the arms that went way out over the road. But the design that was similar between the two is that they used an amber or a yellow color. And I've always been sort of confused from day one with this particular cross, that the law states that if you press the button and the lights flash, as a motorist, I have to stop. It's not a yield, it's a stop to the pedestrian. So the question is, why from an MTO standpoint are the lights not red? And can they be red?
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hall. Manager Velick would certainly be the best person to answer that question, as he was intimately involved in the design of this crosswalk. So I'll need to ask him that question, although I know that CAO Skinner might be able to provide some insight as well, given her background.
Skinner?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Deputy Mayor Hall. I was just wishing I had the appropriate manual right in front of me to see the different colors and setups that were endorsed in the traffic control devices setup. But I would have to also go to Manager Velick and the appropriate manual, but we would be happy to commit to do so and reply.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, I'll provide an update, if I may, on the Hurontario Street sidewalks. I know there has been some questions on that. So committee and the public will have seen that the intersection at Hurontario and Campbell and Lockhart is now complete and operational. And I hope that the community is enjoying that improvement at that intersection. As part of that project, we did include the sidewalk from Lockhart Drive south to Tracy Lane. And you will see that a majority of that way right now has a gravel path in preparation for a sidewalk. So the plan is that the contractor will be working on completing that sidewalk this September, and hopefully it will be complete before the end of September. There is, we were delaying a little in completion of the sidewalk because there's some coordination involved with Eden Oak at the entrance of Tracy Lane. And the developer for Eden Oak is required to complete some storm infrastructure work right at that intersection. And it's a little involved. It requires utility locates and our work on Hurontario with the sidewalk will be matching into a future curb that they will be installing. So we're going to install the sidewalk as far as we can and so in between Gulfview Drive and Tracy Lane, residents will see that the sidewalk will end, and then we'll just continue to Tracy Lane with a asphalt path because that section will be torn up by the developer next year The developer will need to complete that little final sidewalk portion. But we struggle with doing the full completion of the sidewalk, only knowing that it's going to be temporary in nature. So we should see a sidewalk along here, Ontario, on that east side before the end of September, and that will hopefully help with some of the movement of our pedestrians and children and cyclists.
Great, very good.
And lastly, I did want to provide an update on the accessible shuttle service that is provided within the town of Collingwood by Ace Taxi. So staff received a notice from Ace Taxi about their inability to continue with the accessibility shuttle service for various reasons, which include staffing and cost. So they have provided notice to the town that at the end of September, after September 30th, they will be ceasing this in providing this service within the town of Collingwood. The town did have a multi-year agreement with Ace Taxi to provide this service, and that agreement did expire in April 2020. So they did meet the requirements of their agreement. This decision is coming after that agreement has lapsed. Staff understand the value of this service, and we've been working and talking internally about what the next steps can be for us to provide a similar or alternative approach. There will be a lapse in service until it is further reviewed with our options are further reviewed with staff, and we will be talking with the accessibility committee, and then we will bring forth some options or recommendation to council at a future committee meeting. Ace Taxi has notified the regular users, or they will be notifying them as of today, starting this week, that the service will be ending at the end of the month. They have these users, the regular users, is approximately 15. They report are of regular users. So they have the options of using our Red Cross transit service. So that's just not an on-demand service. The requirement is to call ahead and kind of book your travel. They can use our accessible call trans system, or they might have to use a private provider. And the town will also, so on top of Ace Taxis providing this notification to the regular users, the town will, of course, provide some notification to the community through our website and the social media outlets. But we did want the committee to know that this, unfortunately, this service will be ceasing at the end of the month.
Thank you, Director Slama. That is indeed most unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
I had one question in regard to a request that came to me from a teacher at CCI that I took to Manager Velick before the end of school last year. And that was a request to convert the walk signal at Cameron and Hurontario Street to automatic. Right now, it will only be activated with a demand push of the button. If you could maybe let me know where that is right now.
Sure. So, yes, so you had asked Manager Velick what the opportunities are to change that light so it's automatic rather than being initiated by a pedestrian pushing the button. So when you look at the intersection of Hurontario and Campbell and Collins, this is right beside CCI, the lights are prioritized for the Hurontario traffic, and the east-west traffic, the light for east-west traffic, is initiated either when a vehicle approaches the intersection and triggers the light, or as you said, when a pedestrian pushes the button to cross the road. If a vehicle approaches and there's no pedestrian, it's just the vehicle that initiates the light. The light is relatively short, like maybe 7 or 8 seconds, just enough time to allow a vehicle to move through the intersection or turn left, or a couple of vehicles to do those movements. And then it switches back to prioritizing the Hurontario traffic. If a pedestrian pushes the button, that extends the time of the east-west light. So it extends it by maybe 20 seconds. So quite a length of time to allow a person to cross the street, and for the vehicles in particular to still turn left after a pedestrian crosses. So you go from a 7-second east-west light to, you know, a 27, 28-second east-west light. So if we were to change that signaling so that the light changes automatically without a pedestrian initiating the light, then our only opportunity is to always assume that there's a pedestrian and extend that east-west length of time. And our concern is that given the traffic on Hurontario, and I know that there are times where this intersection is very busy and there's lots of pedestrians, but we can't change the signals to operate a certain way just during certain hours of the day, right? It's a change that's reflective 24/7. So we would have this signaling happening all the time, and we're quite concerned of how the traffic would back up on Hurontario when there's no vehicle or no pedestrian on the east-west lanes. So certainly right now our recommendation is to not change the light. If a pedestrian doesn't push the button, like there is the opportunity for the light to be extended for a pedestrian, but they do need to push the button. Our preference would be staff's preference. We don't feel that it's warranted to change it and for the pedestrians, but we can, you know, consider looking at some opportunities to explain to the public through our website or maybe different ways, maybe through the school, how the signals work, and that there is the need to push the button to trigger. And I will say that this is the way all majority of the lights are at our intersections in town, right? One is prioritized, and you know it changes in the other direction. But if a pedestrian if it's only when a pedestrian pushes the button that the time is extended in any direction.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I use that intersection quite a bit because it's fairly close to where I live, and I certainly have seen situations where there is confusion between pedestrians and vehicles. Pedestrians, especially during school days, school years, assuming they can cross regardless. And I'm hoping that we actually can communicate with the school, communicate via our website. And I'm wondering if there's even some, you know, small signage that we could attach to those posts at that intersection, just to remind the students that they need to press the button in order to cross as safely as possible. Okay, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two things. One on the crosswalks. I wanted to just comment that, you know, I certainly didn't understand what our Director of Public Works and Engineering just explained about the timing. And I would hazard to guess virtually no one does. And I know that the problem becomes this issue of confusion that our chairs talked about, And certainly if I know if I come, okay, confession, if I come up to a light and it's green and I'm walking and the pedestrian light's red, I think, oh, maybe what's the matter with it? And I just cross anyway, all right? And so I was reading quite recently, I guess this is a problem in Vancouver. And so I now understand why, because you don't get enough time to cross if you have to activate it. So they've actually abandoned the whole idea of having some that are activated and some not, because that's what we have in our community. I know there's lots that just automatically switch. But I'm sort of leave it with staff to consider at what point, if we're going to be friendly to pedestrians, do we just say, you know, we're always going to have enough time for them to cross and nobody has to know the intricacies of the timing of lights to be able to get across safely. And my last thought is, I'll just say, in that same bit I was reading about Vancouver, Vancouver also is doing a pilot. I believe it's a pilot, but they're allowing the pedestrian go walk signal to advance. I think it was 8 seconds before the cars, right? Because they're trying to get to, you know, safety first for pedestrians. So I'll just leave that with you. I know we have lots coming forward in the future on traffic calming. So, so the other thing I wanted to talk about was your last comment, which Director Slama, on the ACE taxi cabs. And while we've been meeting, a resident has sent me a message asking if the town purchased that handicap taxi vehicle, and don't we have any recourse because of that? Did we in fact purchase that vehicle?
Through the chair. So we used to own the vehicles, and then ACE Taxis purchased them from us when we entered into the agreement. My recollection of the agreement. So we do not own the vehicles now. We own the vehicles that the Red Cross transit system operate.
Okay, thank you. So I have two other comments on general updates, but if there's more to be said by Director Slama, I'll just stand down on that. No, you're done? Okay. Madam Chair, can I ask my two final things? Okay.
Yes, you may. I just need to excuse myself just for a split second here.
Okay. So one is, and this is relates to Starbucks. I know we've had some reporting back on staff, but the Starbucks location on First Street, I'm sure all of us on council and most of senior staff have received unending complaints and advice this summer on how to fix that problem of the cars going into the drive-in or drive-through and backing up onto First Street and causing all manner of havoc. So the most common question I get asked, and so I give it to you, is what are our options to require Starbucks to reconfigure the access points to the property to eliminate the safety issues arising out of the drive-through traffic?
Madam Chair, can I just interject for 1 second? I am leaving the meeting. I've got a commitment that I'm headed to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Councillor Hamlin.
I asked my question. I just would ask if our director could answer it. Thank you.
So you are correct. We have received, staff as well as council members have received a lot of comments this summer about the entrance at Starbucks, and I think that the issue of cars stopping on the road and stopping over top of the sidewalk has been exacerbated a bit by the restrictions for the pandemic, right? With the Starbucks building not being, with patrons not being able to enter the the business, for a few months, and then and I think people are more comfortable in some cases using the drive-through. So it is an issue we are aware of, and we have been talking internally. Engineering and planning and bylaw recently had a meeting with the OPP to talk about what are our options and how could we improve the situation for our community, and CAO Skinner was part of those meetings as well. Vehicle stopping on the road is a violation of the Highway Traffic Act, so we do look to them to provide some enforcement, but it is difficult. It's happening often, and simply, I think, staffing wise, they're not able to have someone there to man that drive-through business on a regular basis. But your question is what can we do? I believe your question was, how could we improve that situation? So when this site, recently went through a site plan application to expand the buildings on that site, engineering and planning did bring forth that this issue existed then. Just like I said, it seems to have been exasperated this year, but they did look at how they could either restrict the use or change the use of that entrance off of First Street. And basically there was an interpretation at the time that was made that their right for that access off of First Street should be maintained. So what engineering was able to require was that it used to be a in-out entrance, and now it's in only. It's meant to be one of the two. One lane is for the drive-through, and one is supposed to be a through entrance, so that patrons can go to the parking spots. The parking spots, the angles were aligned such that it forces patron when they back out to exit the north way. But there was limited ability to change exactly how the orientation of the drive-through. So, following our recent internal meeting, our next steps are that engineering and the OPP are going to reach out and talk to the owner of the property and see if we can have some further discussions with them about what we can do. And I think, one option certainly that we have discussed was, having a sign, putting a sign up that just reminds motorists and drivers that they shouldn't be stopping traffic on First Street while they're waiting to order a coffee. But really, we're trying to collectively look at the most effective way to change this driver behavior, which is a problem that we recognize. So we are trying to work through a solution, but today we don't have one.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. And my last question, because it's been 5 weeks, and anyway, my last question I get relates to inquiries I've had about the status of our infill housing report. And I believe this would be a question directed to our Director of Planning and Economic Development.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Hamlin. Now, this is a report that we were working on in earnest through the summer months, and we became derailed particularly by a private patio expansion program. The planner that was working on the file has since become heavily involved in a number of development review applications. So we're sort of limited from a resource standpoint. From a broader planning perspective, we are examining the issue of infill development, not limited to individual property redevelopment, but different types of development, different forms of development. And I expect that as the official plan update moves into its next phase, which is options and directions, council will be looking more broadly at this issue about, in particular, about intensification in mature neighborhoods, not on a lot by lot basis necessarily, but from multi-unit perspective potentially, as it wades through the options available to it for dealing with future growth and development in the community. So in that respect, although the delay has kept us from delivering the report as originally projected around this time or October, it's my view that that including these broader issues and consideration of info more broadly will help the community deal with these larger issues and the specific issues more effectively in the long run.
Okay, so I totally understood that. It makes sense. So the answer is it will be dealt with more in the next phase of the official plan review. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, generally speaking, that's correct.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Director Farr. Councillor Hamlin. Are there any other items we've kind of got, we've blended departmental updates and other business here, with my apologies. So if there are no further of either of those, our last item should be our public delegations. Oh, is that Councillor Jeffrey? Do you have oh, okay. Public delegations for a maximum of 5 minutes. Deputy Clerk, are there any members of the audience who wish to speak?
Matthew Pretty is still on the line and he has requested to speak again.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pretty.
Okay, I'm here. Can everyone hear me, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Chair Doherty, may I comment regarding my concern about Highway 26, the ongoing construction at Niagara and 26?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have a new computer, an Asus Chromebook. It's wonderful. I'm able to join the Zoom meeting and connect with this professional body of town council and staff. As you know, we do have issues like the Starbucks parking lot, and I agree there should be an attendant manning that parking lot and welcoming people into the parking lot during high traffic. I'm so glad Councillor Hamlin brought that up. I'm so impressed with you, Councillor Hamlin. Honestly, you put so much time into these processes, as well as the whole council body. Staff member Miss Peggy Slama, I have a question for you. With regards to Park Bridge, what an amazing building. It's so interesting. Will the third turning lane go in this year? I know you mentioned about Niagara Street crosswalk. As Bud Powell said again, we should possibly put in a full light stop, a full light. That area of development, could you just give us an update and summary of where we're at there? We have that nice new sidewalk as the crushed gravel, like you're suggesting we hear in Ontario. The matchmaking with development and public infrastructure, such as that area over on 24 that's being facilitated, updated, and widened, and made ready for more traffic. And as we know, there's a lot of people from the city that are enjoying day drives up north here. I'm so happy we deployed the portable washrooms. They're being cleaned today along Harborview Park Trail. That's great. COVID-19 is real. And we need to realize that that access point could flood over. Will there be rocks installed this year next to that sidewalk? Will the sidewalk be paved? Will we see a full light next year? And will the Park Bridge development road access finalization be done before winter begins in November 2020. Thank you very much, and this has been a very interesting meeting. That is my question regarding the 26 Niagara Huron finalization of that very important pedestrian and roadway update. Thank you.
Director Slama.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Pretty. So yes, Park Bridge, as part of their development, will be working on a road widening, which will include the central turning lane, and they are intending to do that this fall. So we'll see that between the Sobeys and to the east side of the Park Bridge property. The Huron Street and Niagara Street crosswalk that we're looking at is currently under design, and we're planning to have that constructed in the spring so that it's operational for next summer. And right now that does remain a crosswalk. You know, there have been some comments provided to committee to look at signalization, traffic lights. That crosswalk will stop traffic when someone pushes the button. It's not the flashing crosswalk like at Hamilton Drain. So Manager Vellet can speak to it more maybe in a future meeting, but in his discussions with the MTO, the warrants aren't there for a full traffic signal. So we are moving ahead with the signalized crosswalk. And I believe I provided an answer already earlier committee with respect to the high lake levels and Mr. Pretty's concerns with the water on the roads. So, you know, as I said earlier, we are aware that we're seeing some high water there, and Manager Velek is looking at that and looking to ensure that the stormwater works that are been put in place are adequate. So those are my responses.
Thank you very much, Director Slama. Any other members of the public that wish to speak on any matter related to development operations?
There are no other members in the audience at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, well then we can move along to adjournment, and moved by Councillor Jeffrey, I guess, that the Development and Operation Services Standing Committee be hereby adjourned. I see, I haven't even called the vote yet. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. And thank you very much, everyone, for a very fruitful meeting. And my apologies for my dog. Good night, everyone.
Good night.